May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Amen. Welcome, everybody. Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi, ça va? Ni hao, namaste, osaya anakituwaya, I see you. Akwaba, etisen, habaragani, jambo mbimini Kofi, ni nifurako kutana na wewe. Bakbartav, Shabbat Shalom, Barak Allah Shem Yahweh, Shalom Allah Shem Yahweh, Ane Kofi, Hello, Servants of Christ, Mashalom Khe, Manut. Hello, everybody. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor of Servants of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Thank you for joining us today. We very much so appreciate you. We thank you. Thank you for spending some time with us today. We appreciate your presence. And we are excited to continue to move ahead in this series. We're coming up closer to the end of the series. Praise Yah. Today we're going to take time out to do some Q&A, as we try to do from time to time in the midst of these series that we're in. So hopefully you'll be able to, if you have any questions or anything like that that you'd like to be able to bring up, feel free to. And we thank you in advance for doing so. And thank you once again for spending some time with us on this rising. We know you could be doing many different things. It is a Sunday, so many different people are on their way to services and all that stuff. And even if you're on your way, although that might not be our thing, we still hope that you get there safely. And we hope that you are all right on your way to where you are headed to. And we appreciate your presence once again. So thank you for being on with us. We are excited and grateful and thankful to be with you guys one more again on this rising. And we appreciate you so very much. Thank you in advance to everybody who's on all the platforms. We once again give all praise and honor to the Most High. We give all praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who this life is able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we're thankful and grateful to everybody for being on today. So we'll go ahead and get into it. And thank you to those who are being faithful and committed and coming on in. I know they are making it every day. They're making it that much more difficult to find us, to see that we're on. Yes, exactly, right? But we appreciate your presence and thanks for pressing for a word today. We'll try to be on a little longer. I will admit, been up, most of the night. So we will do our best to make Sunday a little longer than what it normally is. But y'all just keep us in prayer as we continue to push through what we need to do. But we thank you on all the platforms. We once again are thankful to the Most High. We're thankful to the Most High for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life is able to be honored. Check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we're thankful and grateful to the Most High for what she's doing and you guys who support her in her business endeavors. We thank you for supporting each other's business endeavors. We thank you for supporting each other. We thank you for coming and once again finding us where we are, and we appreciate you so very much. Let's go ahead and say hello to everybody real quick, and then we'll get into today. How you doing, Sister Dawn? Everybody on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, we appreciate you. How you doing, Sister Dawn? How you doing, Sister Denise? Hello, how are we doing? Miss Pierce, I believe I saw. Robin, Nature 12, not even sure who's still on, but we thank you guys. Rebecca, Sister Nadine, Diced Apple, hello, how you doing? Minister Tamara, Yasm, Sage, Brother Jaron. Thank you to everybody who's on. We appreciate you so very much. So even though there's only a few of us on right now, prayerfully, they'll finally start letting people know that we're on. But or people will come on as they normally do. Praise Yah. Today's Q&A. We're in the midst of, we're getting close to the end of the Balaam Doctrine series. In a couple of days, we'll kind of do Q&A again, even though we'll do a review session, but we'll allow some Q&A. But today's Q&A. So if there's any questions, comments, concerns, anything regarding what we've been talking about, anything even regarding if it's a little off topic. Those who are coming on with us for the first time, we enjoy and applaud and even promote your questions. We ask for you to ask as many questions, even question belief system, culture, all those things. We just ask specifically that you be respectful of culture, you be respectful of those, and even be pleased, if you don't mind, look out for the fact that there are children and people of different ages and things like that who are on here. So, a curse word here or there because of it being something that you use all the time can be excused, but we ask that you be careful with certain things, especially because they try to find reasons to take these live sessions down all the time. So we just ask that you keep that in mind. But any questions, comments, concerns? Yeah, you checked and you didn't see notifications. Yeah, it is what it is. They've been doing it on YouTube now. Facebook's been doing it forever, but Facebook doesn't really do notifications like that, I guess. But they've been doing it on YouTube now. Even so, it's one of those things where they're trying to check what we're doing, but that's okay. Especially after, if you noticed yesterday, we started talking about something specific. When we started talking about, I forget what it was, when we started hitting on something specific, and we were giving some game government-wise, they took that thing down. And hey, how you doing, babe? My wife is on, the honor of Maya. As always, please check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Thank you, babe, so much for being on. Love you so much. Thank you for your support. Hopefully you get some rest. How you doing, Brother Henry? How you doing, Sister Tracy? So any questions, comments, or concerns, we can go any way you guys would like. I will do my best, but I don't always have the answer to everything. But we can go different ways if you guys would like to go. Also, too, we'll see how things are going. It's supposed to be our special session. It's the last Sunday of the month, so normally we try to come on in the evening. The last Sunday of the month, my wife and I, at about 8:00 p.m. We'll see. Things have things have been a little interesting as of late, but we'll try to see if we can do that for you guys. If for some reason we're not on, just keep us in prayer. You said, is there pre-Adamic or pre-Adam, a race before Adam is already a human being? So that's a great question. And Matisa May Lorraine, how you doing? I didn't say hello to you. Shalom. Peace. Shalom to everybody. Bakur Tav. Thank you for being on today. Yeah, so that's a great question. I would start out by telling you that, yes, there is one. Now, so people, this is a very difficult conversation to have, as you would probably well know with your experiences and your experience just in, clergy, et cetera. This is a difficult conversation to have. We talk about it a lot to give you even more in depth. We talk about it as part of our Genesis Revisited series. So if you look up our playlist on YouTube and look up Genesis Revisited, I believe one, I can't remember the name of it, but I believe one of them, we talk about creation, basically, the Genesis Revisited series. We focus on Genesis 1, Genesis 2. And so we do talk about it. However, right? Because I'm not dismissing it. I'm just letting you know if you want to go a little more in depth in case I miss something in my brain, because I'm going to obviously be firing something rapid fire real quick. If you look at even just the term generation and then generations, right? There's the generation of heaven and earth, and that includes these particular people that are created, right? Then there's generations. And the generation is by people who focus specifically and strategically on so the way it was described to me by an apostle that I had, and she was a great teacher, by the way. The way it was described to me is there was a group of people, and I did some research. I don't have the stuff on top of my head right now. Perfectly, it comes back at some point during this conversation. But there were a group of people, and today we kind of refer to them as like Elohimites or Elohimites. Elohimites were these people that kind of focused on what we now know today as Genesis 1, technically not just Genesis 1, but Genesis 1 through Genesis 2, verse 3. Right. And then there were these group of people that we kind of refer to as like Yahavites, or people who focused on basically Genesis chapter 2. And so the two kind of were against each other, or not against each other, but it's kind of like the whole religious thing. Like, don't be a Paul, don't be a Silas. But some people decide to be both Paul, and I'm more of a Paul, I'm more of a Silas, I'm more Episcopalian, I'm more Baptist, I'm more Methodist, etc. So they kind of had that going on. When Moses comes together and writes the beginning of what we now call Tanakh or Torah, he specifically says, why are you guys separating it? In essence, really, and really, he's led by the Most High, or he's led by the Holy Spirit. So you could, in essence, just say the Yod of the Yod Yah, or the hand of Yah, right? Literally says, why are you separating? Put it together. So there's obviously archaeological evidence that points towards people being more than what we normally do, which is just 6,000 years old. Which, by the way, Adam in and of itself, we have to even think time doesn't even start until the sun, the moon, and stars are there. And death, as far as counting how many years somebody's going to live, technically doesn't even start until sin enters. So once again, contextually speaking, we look at time, we look at humanity, we look at these things a lot different. And how you doing, Sister Latoya? I am. How you doing? So there's a lot of different things that and how you doing, Romac? There's a lot of different ways we can go into conversing about it, but there's just even biblical evidence. And then not only that, but you talk about even some of the lost books, they seem to point towards people who are outside of Adam. Now, Adam is our seminal head, right? He's the ultimate seminal head for us. In other words, Adam is who is our father. He was created in Eden. Now, Eden is not the Garden of Eden. Remember, the Garden of Eden, it was huge, by the way. Remember, things look more like Pangea. So in the look of like things looking more like Pangea, right? Or before the things split, before things split, right? Before the continents that today, right? Split into being the way that we think of the earth looking today, everything looked like it was one, right? Everything looked like it was together. And we have geological evidence of that as well, geographical evidence of that as well, right? Everything was connected at one point. And then we get to this person called Peleg or Pelag in scripture. And it talks about how all of these things then split into what we know today, right? So, but before that happened, when it tells us Adam and Eve is not, and we don't like to look at it in succession. And because we've been taught that there's nothing before Adam, what we do is, what we basically do is we made like a religion out of it. And we try to say, okay, what people teach in church nowadays is the first chapter is just giving you an overview of everything. And then when you get to the second chapter, instead of it going on a timeline, they say, well, the second chapter is just an overview. It's going back and giving you specifics about Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 30, I guess, right? But the reality is if you read it correctly, right? You read it, Genesis 1 is about the generation of how Yah created the earth. And then it says, once we get to chapter 2, it tells you this is about the generations. So the first generation of the earth, right, is the creation of the earth. So there is man, right? Now, what that is exactly, who that is, that part is up for debate, and we do have argument, and there are people that have some interesting arguments and some arguments I think we should pay attention to even outside of our faith, right? But it talks about the generation of man when earth is originally created. And then after that, it talks about the generations, right? So if we were talking about a first generation, like if you were to say I'm first generation, so to speak, I'm not, but let's just pretend I'm first generation of my family, then I'm first generation. Anything that comes out of me would be generations, right? Anything that comes out of me would be generated. These generations would be generated from the generation, from the original. So the Bible, and the Bible has no problem talking about even things like dinosaurs and different things like that, and it has no problem talking about it in the word when it talks about the generations, but it has no problem talking about with a generation. So there's a lot of things that were there. And Adam seems to be now. This is the part that gets a little, and this is the part where we have to start, where I have to start admitting to you, I'm getting into the theoretical. Okay, So, remember, we're about contextual facts. So now I have to admit, I'm starting to dive now from this point on into a little bit of theory, and I'm not going to get too deep into that because, first of all, I don't know how qualified I am to answer all that. But then I would have to, hey, how you doing, Sister Nadine? And then I would have to start doing some things and start trying to finesse things a little bit, and I'm never comfortable with that. So let's deal with, so if I've got the generation and then generation, so there's evidence that we have that there are people who have been found buried, but nobody carries their DNA. Why is that? Well, we could say they were wiped out in a flood. There's evidence that Cain is not married to his family member, right? Because Yah wouldn't want that to happen. So, right, so Adam has nobody on his level that he should be able to become one with. So he creates something out of Adam himself. So we would say, well, then, if that's the case, why wouldn't he do that with others? Well, Adam and Eve become our seminal head, the two become one, right? Adam and Eve now being our seminal head, the two becoming one, this takes us to a place to where now, okay, anything that comes out of them is now something that is like pure. It started off pure, it started off as what is going to be the ultimate, because Adam is the only person, he's born in Eden. He's the only person we are told, right? Born in a sense, right? But he's born in Eden. Then he's placed in the Garden of Eden, in a place that's secure from everything, and his wife is put in the Garden of Eden. So you have these two people that are supposed to be over Eden, in the Garden of Eden. It doesn't say, right, in chapter 2, it doesn't really tell us that Adam is the only man, right? It tells us that Adam and Eve, or basically suggests us Adam and Eve are the only ones in the garden. So they were supposed to have a specific relationship with the Most High, right? And it's not until Cain, who kills his brother, and after sin enters, that then once we're in a sinful state, it seems to be that now Cain goes and he finds somebody else who's out there outside of the garden from another tribe, and then marries her and takes her, right? So we know at some point, so it doesn't say Adam and Eve had a daughter, Cain, and Cain and Abel. Cain marries one of his sisters. It says that Cain went out and found somebody who was already out there, right? And then married. And by the way, wasn't even supposed to leave. Wasn't even supposed to do that. Yah wanted to forgive him so that he might be able to stay. Now, they were outside of the garden at this point because they had sinned. But I'm just saying, this particular family was supposed to stay united. Cain was supposed to stay in the same place. Cain then ends up, going outside of the family, going to somebody else, and then going to create Nod, or the place of wondering. So we have a lot of different things there that point, whether we talk about biblically, scientifically, we can keep going down that rabbit hole. But there's a lot of different things that we could point out to say, yes, Adam and Eve were not the first. They were not the first. And see, now we get into this weird place. The first species of human, because I don't even like how we use the word species all the time, but I guess I'll use that term. They were not the first species of human. However, specific human, right? And then that's why also, if you even look, now even after the flood, you'll discover that there are some tribes and there's some groups of people, and there's some of us that carry DNA that they say doesn't exist except for bones that they find from time to time, or they can't find any of this DNA that exists in some of our tribes and some of our people. And it's because there are some people who were killed off by the flood. And once we get past the flood, whatever, the only thing that exists is what's carried through basically 8 people. So if it wasn't in Noah, really 2 people technically, right? If it wasn't in Noah, and if it wasn't in Noah's wife, or actually, I'm sorry, we'd have to say technically 5 people. Because if it wasn't in Noah, if it wasn't in Noah's wife, or if it wasn't in any of Noah's daughter-in-laws, then those things don't exist. So there's a lot of places after that we can go to where now I would just, at this point, I would feel like I'm getting so theoretical that I'm giving more things that I can't put any concrete evidence behind, but I can just tell you things that make sense. Doesn't mean that they're even correct. It just means they make sense. So after that point, I just kind of leave it there. So I don't know if that answered it, or at least maybe took it in a direction that you could go ahead and study. How you doing, Minister Moselle? Or, but hopefully Hopefully that kind of helps with the question that you had to ask. It's a great question though. But yes, personally, I have no problem with saying that there is some type of human being, regardless of what we want to say that is, looks like DNA wise, etc. I have no problem being able to admit that the Bible clearly is making some kind of reference to something that existed outside of us. And even when you hear, and then the scary thing for people is people are like, oh, so is it the Cro-Magnon? Is it the Neanderthal? Is it this? Is it that? I think you still have to think human being. I'll say this. I want to put this on there too. And once again, this is I think. I try not to give opinions, so I'm opining. Take what I say with a grain of salt. It's based off of some cultural reference points, but this is not concrete. All right. Personally, I have no problem with it, and I have no problem believing these look like human beings because even scientists today, for example, remember we thought Neanderthals were people that grunted and they had sticks, and they were all cavemen and this, that, whatever, right? We've come to find out that these Neanderthals literally were just human beings. They looked like human beings. They didn't have the sloped foreheads. They won't change it in some of the museums, like the Smithsonian Museum and other places where they have the Natural History Museum, or if you've been to different natural history museums or whatever, you'll see they'll still have the same thing up there. But scientists have for a while now been saying, yeah, we that was us trying to do stuff that would pull people in and this and that or whatever. That stuff's not really real, you know? Yeah, Neanderthal, Dennis, and stuff like that. Like I think Neanderthal is basically considered to be, for the most part. Now we got to be careful when you use the term European because people use it to try and say anybody that's white. But Neanderthal DNA, for the most part, is stuff that we see. People would even admit it's just probably ancient versions of Europeans. They look like humans, everything like that, or even Denison DNA. They tried to present it, all this stuff like they'd be slouched over and stuff like that. Denison DNA is probably those that we call Asiatic, which means it's probably those that came out of Africa because those that are Asian now, right, that we think of as Asian people. Look at the Bantu people. Look at South African people. We know where they came from. If you go to Japan, if you're in Japan, they say that you can't even be a ninja or you can't be a samurai unless you have one drop of black blood in you, right? So that used to be a thing that they had because they knew where they came from. So it's a lot of, and even if you go there today on visits, there's people at SOC who've told me stories of going on visits to Japan. And I've been there briefly, but I'm talking people who got to spend time there. And because of the color of their skin, they would take them to these places that nobody else would get to go to, or their friends would get to go to places because they happen to be there. And they would take them to these places and show them some of their story. They would show them people, with afros that are still over there and stuff like that look just like our uncles and aunties and stuff. So it's it's a lot of the stuff that's there. There's a lot of evidence, once again, that we know that people were there in different places. Now, if we want to get into what were their beliefs, the structure, this and that, there's some archaeology we can kind of hold on to. A lot of that stuff is lost. And what was the relationship they had with the Most High? I would see this. This is where I go to a place that's interesting too, because then it gets for me, my brain, where it works. What did they believe? They believe what Adam, if we break down what they do, they believe what Adam and Eve believed. If we look at a lot of these pyramids, what they say, what people did, how people presented themselves, what people seem to teach their children, how they buried people, how they were attached to natural law. They didn't, these ancient people and stuff like that, as much as they keep doing this, they were not polytheists, right? They were monotheistic societies. So, and even if you look at like China and some of the stuff that they keep from things that they found, or even some of the stuff from ancient China, even in their writings, they have the same belief system that we do. They called them, instead of Yahweh, they called Elohim Shangdi, but they believe in Shangdi. They believe Shangdi, they have a temple similar to the temple that we have built. It's bigger, but it's similar. It has three places. It has the inner court, the outer court. They did sacrifices there. They believed in Noah. They believed in. I'm going a little further away from what you were saying, but it kind of connects. Hopefully, you get the connection point. They believed in Noah. They believed in Shem, Japheth, and Ham. All those different things. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that are there. Yeah, megalithic structures with advanced technology we don't have now. And even if you think about it, that's not even a problem for us who are biblically inclined anyways, right? Like the ancient technology, is not even a problem for us, because look at and hey, how you doing, Sister Judy? Look at what was going on with the, what's the word I'm looking for? Look at what was going on with the Tower of Babel in and of itself. I mean, we could talk about it, Enoch, and how the angels came down and gave certain things and certain mindsets and taught people how to do this and do that or whatever, and do things with the ground, even though we know Adam would have already have been able to show some people some of this stuff, since he had to learn how to till the ground. So this would have been stuff that was passed down, but these fallen angels come down and apparently, gave us more than what was there. Also, though, look at um, just the Tower of Babel. And the Tower of Babel, they were building a tower, and the Most High never said they weren't going to be able to reach heaven. And how you doing, Sister Beverly? How you doing, Black Steel? How you doing, Darren? You said Zion means path to righteousness. Well, Zion is a character. Zion is the seventh character of the Hebrew alphabet. So I would say Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kei, Vav, Zion. That's its actual initial usage. As a character. It's part of how we write our letter system. Zion actually means weapon as a character. It means weapon, and it means cultivation. So Mount Zion is a place that now. So now, because of what Mount Zion was, we also have other implications for it. So because we would meet Yahweh on Mount Zion, now it's a holy place. So it can mean holiness, because we can talk about Zion and the children of Zion or the daughters of Zion, right? It can be something that causes us to make sure that we know how to be children of the Most High. There are many different things, but Zion, as far as just the character, as far as in Avla or Hebrew writing, it's the seventh character. It means weapon, and it also can be a weapon. Matter of fact, Abraham, when he went looking for Lot, when they went and defeated them, and then he gave the tithe to Melchizedek and all that. When he went and did that, Abraham used a Zion, the same thing that they would use to cultivate the ground. They used a Zion. They used that as a weapon. And thank you for the love. Appreciating how you doing. I think it's Rebel Love. Thanks for being on. And Solo Rider, how you doing? So there's a lot of different things we can kind of go out. Yeah, Nimrod City and Tower was massive. Yeah, so if you look at going back to that, I'm sorry I went into the other thing real quick, but yeah, if you look at what was going on, it says they had no problem. They were going to hit Babel. They were going to hit heaven. That wasn't the issue. The Most High said they're in agreement, and if I let them stay in agreement, they will hit the target. That's what they said. They said they said they're in agreement. We will hit the target. Like, even though they're in agreement over sinful stuff, sin still will get some things that would amaze the eye done. So you got to be careful. See, people will see some sinful stuff and they'll be like, man, that's amazing. Like, don't be surprised when people are amazed by the sinful, or when people that are sinning are out here doing some things that last for a long time. Remember, Rome wasn't built in a day. And in a sense, I know we don't like romantic things because of what Romans did and what they represent as far as the beast and things like that, and how they've kind of messed up, the way that we operate even as a people, right? But don't get it twisted, right? Just because we don't like Roman values, we're not romantic in our values. Don't get it twisted. Rome was something that you look back on, you say some of that stuff it amazes. Now, the word amazement literally means it even takes you outside of thinking. It messes with your thinking, right? It amazes you. It's stupefied. But yeah, what Rome did was incredible. So we'll do this thing that somebody's sinful, therefore it's not. No. Like, somebody's sinful. The gifts come without repentance. If somebody's called to be a construction worker, they could be a construction worker while being a killer at the same time. Doesn't mean they can't. You're right. If somebody is a carpenter, it doesn't mean you got to be a hashfa. You don't have to be the Messiah to be a carpenter. You can be a carpenter and be out there doing some wild stuff. So when they were building the tower, and you got to realize, I said they could reach the heavens, that means that they had to have technology that y'all are now talking about in 1950s and 1960s, that they finally got up into a portion of heaven. But they were going to get up past that Aquia. They can't even get past that Aquia now, or what you call the firmament, or Uranus, or Uranus, right? The firmament, because they worship the Greek god. But for us, Aquia, they were going to get past that. And they're trying to get nuclear weapons right now to explode and get past it. They can't do it. But there was so much agreement on the earth at that time that the Most High said, let me scatter their language. Let me cause them what you call now to babble. But, Babel didn't mean just be a babbling back then. Babel was a place where people were coming into agreement. Now it was over evil, but it was still agreement. How you doing, Minister? Nice, right? And how you doing? Oh, okay. How you doing, Sister Raina? Be safe out there. Right. So it's a lot of stuff to where we'll hear it. And once again, we don't give the enemy credit. The enemy gives you credit all the time because the enemy respects you enough to study you, to look at you properly, he respects your power enough to say, I've got to do some things to step in. But we don't give the enemy credit for knowing anything, as if the enemy came into existence after you did, or you knew all this stuff before the enemy did. Now, the part of you that comes from the Most High, right? The part of you that comes from the Most High knew some things, but you had that part taken away, or at least you were a member of it, but it was dismembered. It was taken away from you. How you doing, Sister LaCrystal? How you doing, Gertrude? So these are things that we might not know, but it doesn't mean, right? But a lot of us do this, like I've talked about before. I've heard this weird thing that people say, I wish I was part of a church that spoke in tongues so we could confuse the enemy. But it's like, hold up, the enemy knows the tongues. And how you doing, Sister Betty? And I got your message just now. Thank you so much for being awesome. I need to get back into getting in touch with you so we can make sure we're allowing you to use your gift. And thank you for operating in it and so many other things that you do. Thanks for checking in on people. But yeah, so these are things that a lot of these things that we're doing Q&A today, by the way. So if you have questions, comments, and concerns, let us know. Feel free to put them in the chat, and I will do my best to get to them and give the best answer that I can. But yeah, so we deal with a lot of stuff where we're kind of delusional because we don't give credit where credit's due. Whether you want to give credit where credit's due or not is something different. Yeah, we got to study his tactics to engage in warfare, right? You know what a great book on warfare is? And even spiritual warfare, because they talk about spiritual warfare. The culture is coming from, they don't call it spiritual warfare. Read Sun Tzu's Art of War. You'd be surprised at some of the things that they're doing. A lot of the tactics that they have in there, they try to put in their tactics that keep you away from physically fighting. If you can spiritually demoralize somebody, you've already won. Right? That's a lot of the book, Sun Tzu's Art of War, is literally telling you, if you can demoralize somebody spiritually, you already won. And there's even Sun Tzu's Art of War books that are used. Like there's the first Sun Tzu's Art of War book I bought by accident a long time ago was actually a book on business. They were using the art of war to tell you how to be successful in business. So people are using this stuff spiritually all the time. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. You got to know the game. Hey, how you doing, Mies? Why do you believe the original name of the Father and the Son was removed from the Bible? Very simply because the people who are using the Bible, right, or using the Bible at the time, especially, they were changing what it was to make sure that it suited, who they were. Who are the main culprits? I won't say the only culprits, but who are the main culprits when it came to the changing of the Bible? That's a great question, by the way, right? Who are the main culprits when it came to the removing of the name Yahweh? Who's the main culprits when it comes to removing the name Yahashua, or some people would say Yeshua, or Yahushua, or Yahashua, or Yahavashai, or Yahavashai? That would be Rome, right? And then eventually Roman Catholic culture that came out of that, especially when you get to Justinian and Theodore, and they give it over to the Bishop of Rome. They split Rome into two, right? The 2 feet discussed in Daniel chapter 2, and Western Rome is given to the Roman Catholic Church. But Rome keeps on going. We do this whole thing, like a lot of people don't even study Orthodox Christianity. So you have to be careful, because a lot of people will go, well, yeah, see the people of Kush and Ethiopia and blah, blah. Be careful, because some of those places like Abyssinia and stuff over there, they're not using biblical doctrine either. As much as we are always told, right, As much as we are always told, and look, I have Cushitic blood, so it hurts me to say this as much as it might hurt you to hear this, but just hang in there, right? As much as we are always told that Cush or Ethiopia had never had anybody come into their territory, it doesn't mean that they were never influenced, right? The CIA is what helps to make sure that Marxism reached in, right? The United Nations helped to make sure Marxism reached into to Ethiopia, to Kush, right? And to make sure that Haile Selassie was killed, and then to make sure that the dictator was over Ethiopia. We act like Ethiopia was free this whole time. Matter of fact, if you look at some of the ancient Cushitic kings and some of the stuff, even you have to be careful about some versions, because there's many versions of the Ethiopian Bible, or what people call the Ethiopian Bible, and some versions of them you have to be careful about, because some versions were literally changed up because there were kings who killed the original, at least killed off a piece of the original bloodline that actually went from Queen Sheba, which means that there are people that were scattered just like we were scattered. So, so there's a lot of stuff that happens even on there, like when you see the two splits. So we don't recognize a lot of the stuff that's Orthodox Christianity. We uphold it because we say, well, some of the Ethiopians value it. But it doesn't mean just because some Ethiopians value it, right? That's just because some of us uphold Christianity, right? It doesn't mean that that's actually biblical, right? We comprehend it on there, but we don't think on the other side of the diaspora, because we're not taught to bring each other together and to hold each other down and to look at each other's story as if it's our own, because it is. So if you look at what's going on in Kush, in Ethiopia, in South Sudan, etc., there's a lot of wild stuff that happens in their version of Christianity. And you got to know that just like the Roman Catholic Church has flipped the script with some things, that the Roman Catholic Church might not have been there, or Rome, Eastern Rome might not have been there physically, but they've been there spiritually and putting some stuff in and paying people to put stuff in there for quite some time, right? So there's a lot of stuff that happens when we get into those things, but you have to first ask yourself, like, who were the first Romans? I mean, I'm sorry, who were the first people to even, who were the first people to even introduce and interject those things, as far as what is the names that we got? And they were doing so because, just like Greece changed up all this stuff, and they changed up all their deities and everything when they became a power and came together, and they even started changing some of the stuff that we would now call biblical things to be able to fit their God structure, or their deist structure, their deity structure. Same thing happened with Rome. Rome used the same deity structure, and said they didn't even change anything up. People were furious about Christianity. They didn't like followers of the way that much either, but they were more okay with that than they were with Christians, because Christianity, Christianos, they actually hated when they heard about a Christianos. They actually couldn't stand when they heard about a Christianos or a Christian, because Christians mixed and matched everything. So even before Christians were known about now being these strict Bible believers, which they never really were, Christians back then, they felt sorry for you because they thought you were crazy, or they didn't like you because they felt like you were going to mess things up, because you mix and match so much that you were actually taking away and then you would basically pick and choose from different people's religion, and then you would say everybody had to bow down and sprinkle some Jesus on it, and they didn't like that. So that was originally why Christianos and Christians actually did go through. Eventually, they weren't the first ones to go through the horrors of being thrown to the lions and stuff like that. But eventually, they would get that same kind of hate, but deeper, because people were like, at least people who were what we would call biblical, but at least people who followed the scrolls or were followers of the way or whatever, they at least followed the culture. They kept the stuff separate. They didn't pick and choose, right? But Christianos might worship Saturnalia, which is straight Druid, and Druids even influenced by people of Canaan and stuff like that. Like, they would follow some straight Druidic stuff and then call it Christian. And they'd be like, that's not Christian, that's Druid. That's not Christian, that's Gentile. That's not Christian, that's Gens. That's not Christian, that's Roman. That's not Christian, that's Italian. That's not Christian, that's Gaul. They would be able to, they recognize that. The further we gotten away from that, the harder it has been to deal with those things. How you doing, King? Thanks for being on. So yeah, so that's the reason why you see it done. They didn't even, matter of fact, the first time when they started removing those things, or removing the name, changing the names, you got to remember, like, they already had temples to Zeus. They already had a Madonna and child already. This is why people call Marian or Mary the Madonna and Christ child, right? That statue that y'all see, the same one that Beyonce used in her Black is King. Y'all, right? She kept having that picture showing up in the same pose she was doing over and over again with her child, and she kept saying little things in there like, "You're more than the Bible. You're bigger than the Bible. You're bigger than the world. You're bigger than the problem." But she just slipped that in, and nobody even heard it because it's Bae, right? Whatever Bae says goes. You got to defend Bae to the death. But no, she was slipping some stuff in there, letting you know what was going on. And she herself, she's dancing around with a snake and doing all types of stuff, and doing all and people say, well, it's African culture, and this means no. Like, African culture, having red motorcycles going around with horns, having a snake around you while you're dressed in white, and then all of a sudden the snake is on the devil person, demonic person first, then it's on you, making no difference between the two. That's not an African ritual. Okay, that's not an African ritual. The Madonna and Christ child thing, that's not an African ritual. It is not, right? And they had that in there. That's a Christian value, right? A Christiano's value that came originally from when Christians started mixing and matching so much that Romans, who were upset, they started mixing it. Now, eventually, when you get Christians who start getting in positions of power, what starts happening? They start saying, okay, this temple of Zeus, this is now Jesus. This is half man, half Zeus temple. Jesus, right? What about his mother? Well, we have Madonna and Christ child. Mary had a child. This is now Madonna, or I'm sorry, what about Madonna and child? Well, this would be Madonna and Christ child now. And they didn't even change anything. And people gave the same type of offerings. People ate the same type of stuff. People would have the same kind of sinful attitudes. They just sprinkled some Jesus on it. You said, are the Israelites the last clan of the Canaanites and Amorites, or maybe the Moabites? I mean, well, there are people they married into, so we could say, in a sense, that they married. I mean, Israelites, obviously, there are some Canaanites that they had nothing to do with. Others we know they married into. Matter of fact, in this Balaam Doctrine, we literally are talking about the Moabites, but we know that there's Moabites that's married into Israel, right? We know there's Midianites married into Israel. There's the Amorites, the Amalekites. Now, the Amalekites we really didn't have much to do with, but it doesn't mean none of them ever married into, or none of them ever decided to become followers of the way. But Canaan, obviously, you can't talk about Israelites without having any Canaanite blood. Matter of fact, part of the curse of Canaan, right? Because we think of it as the curse of Ham, but the Bible never said Ham would be cursed. It said Canaan would be cursed, right? We just do this weird thing in our mind. Oh yeah, Ham is cursed. That came from a doctrine of people who were trying to say it was okay to enslave Africans because they said Ham walked in, and since Ham walked in, Ham was cursed. Now, Ham was punished through his son, but Ham was not cursed. It was Ham's seed that was cursed, since Ham saw his father's nakedness, or his seed, right? His testicular area. So, but yeah, I mean, and this is something I always talk about anyways. When we talk about Israelite per se, Israelite blood is something we carry, sure, but you can't say that Israelite blood means that nobody ever mixed and matched, because from the beginning, even before we're called Israelites, who was Abraham? Where does Abraham come from? If you want to do some interesting rabbit hole stuff, you should talk to my wife. She can tell you about, the healing that Abraham would have known from because of the people he came from, right? So the things that they would have known, as far as you can actually track them through herbs and different things like that, and what they would have been called in Kemet, right? Kemet actually had a name for Israelites who taught them some healing stuff. So it was actually some pretty interesting rabbit hole stuff to go through in there. But yeah, it's you can't really talk about, and there was never, in a sense, there was never really any such thing as pure blood, a pure blood Israelite, right? There's never really been any such thing. Even if you look at just Israel himself, Jacob, and ends up with laying down with 4 different women, right? Not biblical, not supported. At the end of the day, Yah works out all things together, but that wasn't what he was supposed to do. But it is what it is, and he was actually tricked into the first two, right? Or the first, or having two in the first place, right? By the one who ends up being the second wife, who and they were in league with their father to get more work out of him, so they'd have a bigger dowry, right? And so Leah wouldn't be out there all by herself and all that stuff. But look at the fact of Israel, in order to be able to make sure that we were born, so to speak, Israel has to go outside of himself, right? And then, so two become one. We do this weird thing where we deny the feminine part of the process. You said, do I believe that Jesus is God? I believe that Jesus is half man, half Zeus. That's a nickname given to him. His name was not Jesus. The letter J didn't exist. Even if you look in the King James Version, this is a 1611, rather, original 1611 King James Version. Even if you look in this, which has no letter J's, anything like that, they are honest about the name. They use the Greek form of the name, Jesus, half man, half Zeus, I-E-S-U-S, or if you want to go to I-E-S-O-E-U-S or whatever, right? And that was a nickname given to him in Greek and Latin. And if you look in your Bible, his name is written in three ways. And first, it's written in Hebrew. That would have been his actual name written. And then Pontius Pilate puts half man, half Zeus. Why would he have done that? He would have done that to make sure that people recognize that they, no matter what language you spoke, you knew what was going on. He had said that he had washed his hands of it. He said, I have nothing to do with this anymore. I dipped my hands at the ball. I washed my hands clean of this. Y'all do what y'all do. I tried to give you, I try to be even in accordance with your culture and use the Day of Atonement and stuff like that. Y'all said, give us Barabbas. Okay, y'all go ahead and do what it is that you want to do. You go ahead and you do whatever it is that you want to do. No problem, right? And then he said, but right, here's Yahshua, King of the Hebrews. He said, write that in Hebrew first. He said, then for those who are here that don't even speak Hebrew because colonization, so to speak, had happened that much, gentrification had happened that much, that some Israelites weren't even speaking their own language. And of course, there were a bunch of people that were not Israelites that lived in this territory. Now, it wasn't even a country as much as it was a territory. So he was like, write it in Greek and write it in Latin. But in Greek and Latin, write half man, half Zeus, because that's what I see him as. He said, this kingdom is not a dessert. I find no fault in him. So write his actual Hebrew name up there, and then write in Greek and in Latin, he was half man, half Zeus. That's the best that he had for him. So I don't call him a nickname given to him because of somebody else's religious belief. If his name was Hashivai, or his other name, which we don't use, Amanavah, or what we call now Emmanuel, I don't use that because that's not who he was. Like, my name is Kofi, no matter where I am on the planet. And so if his name was Yahashua, no matter where he is on the planet, we should probably call him by his name. Mama called him Yahshua. I'm going to call him Yahshua. If you get that reference, we can be friends. We can all be friends. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. Shameless joke. And how you doing, Sister Monica? How you doing, Gus Sissy? How you doing, Sister Patricia? How you doing, Sister Helen? It's a lot of Christians tell lies. Sure. A lot of people tell lies, by the way, too. I'm not here to bash Christianity. I'm just trying to tell people, there was a beginning of it. We act like it didn't have a beginning, because people do this weird thing with Christianity where they act like Christianity always existed. And then they try to say, well, no, Christianity didn't always. And then when you call them out on it, they go, Christianity, well, it didn't always exist, but it existed for the New Testament. Nobody knew there was such thing as an Old and New Testament until somebody wrote that in some pages in the book. How you doing, Peaches? There was never such thing as an Old Testament or an Old Covenant or a New Testament or a New Covenant. That's some new stuff. That's that new. How you doing, Celestial? Great rising to you. That's that new right there. That new false doctrine. Shalom, Darius. How you doing? And today's Q&A. So if you have questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to go ahead and let them fly. I'm going to try my best. I'm pretty tired right now, I'm going to admit to you, but I'm going to do my best to hang in there. On Sundays, we normally go a little longer than we do before, or on other days. We do some Q&A. If it's your first time with us, feel free to ask whatever questions you like. We just ask that you be respectful. We will give respect because respect is not earned. Respect is given, at least in our culture. Hey, how you doing, Sister Cassandra? Yeah, they want us to believe that, for sure. I missed somebody's question. Oh, is this the map before Pangea? So this is the map of what they call Pangea. This is what the Bible is referring to. Is it 100% accurate? I'm not 100% sure, but if we want more of a mindset of what the earth looked like. Especially though, if you look at, like, for real, when they talk in your Bible, when they give you the parameters, like there's always this confusing conversation that happens. People will say, like, I don't even necessarily like this one because I don't like this one because I know where, like, in a sense, this one's some, like, I don't even think of this one being accurate if you know about the parameters of the Garden of Eden. But if you know about the Garden of Eden, they tell you about certain rivers, right, that would have existed, and certain rivers that still exist to this day. And especially even if you don't want to say to this day, at least, at times before Christ, we know they still existed by certain names. And so the Garden of Eden kind of tells you what was connected to what, right? And Eden itself was bigger than the garden. Remember, a lot of people just go, "Oh, Eden," and you think Eden, the Garden of Eden, is being the same in your mind. Separate that in your mind. Eden and the Garden of Eden were two separate places. I'm sorry. Eden, the Garden of Eden was in Eden, but everything in Eden was not the Garden of Eden. But it gives you the outline and it tells you where the rivers are. And so for a lot of people, they go, "Well, how can this be the case?" Because in your mind, you're thinking of all the continents the way they look now. But the reality is that Eden would have looked different and would have been a different place because the earth would have been together, right? It's not until Peleg in scripture, or Peleg, we would say, but Peleg in scripture, until you actually see the earth separate. Oh, amen. Of course, it's Monica. I'm sorry, what? I missed what you said. Oh, yeah, your friend. No. Mhm. Sorry to hear that. I need to reach out to you anyways. I know you tried to call me earlier this week, and this week was not a great week for me. But yeah, sorry to hear about that. Hopefully things will go well. We'll be keeping you in prayer for sure. So yeah, so these are things that we've been mistaught for so long. We come from a really bad perspective. We come from a perspective to where, now the lighting has changed for some reason. I don't know what happened. But we come from a perspective to where this stuff is it's pretty messed up because it's not correct. It's not righteous. We're not coming really from a righteous perspective concerning these items, concerning what's going on. So, and we haven't been taught what's righteous. We've been taught what's wicked. We've been taught what's sinister. How you doing, Brother Anthony, by the way? So we haven't been taught what's righteous. We're not in righteousness when we're concerned, when we're having this conversation. We don't really have a righteous version of this conversation. Righteousness means right, lawful standing. We're not dealing in natural law. So we don't think about these things correct. Once again, like, simple thing, right? How many continents, right? Simple thing. How many continents are there right now? How you doing, Sister Knight? You were taught in school, right? Let's do it like this. Let's do it like this first. How many continents were you taught in school? Right? In school, they taught you how many continents are there on the planet. How you doing, Sister Shima? Right? When you were in school, they taught you what? They taught you there were 7. Right? They taught you there were 7 continents in school. Okay? Right? How many oceans did they teach you? Matter of fact, now people that are going to school now, you got a different answer now. But how many oceans did they teach you that were in school? You said it's ice is the mother of all. Not in my culture. Even if you're doing the ice style thing, we don't say it that way. We say yash style, but that's somebody else's thing that trying to be Kemetic. But even though I have Kemetic blood, it's not of my belief system. So if you want to go there, I guess that's what you would believe. But also too, that's why a lot of y'all like Columbia, District of Columbia, and look at Columbia Masonic values and stuff, and them trying to go back to a time. And by the way, it's interesting people do ISIS thing, but give credit to Kush and the fact that Kemet took what was Cushitic and changed it, and then crossed it out the same way that the Greeks would cross out things for them, like the Arabic would cross out things for them, right? But anyways, yeah, you were taught in school about the oceans, and you were told that there were 4 oceans. Nowadays, they tell you there's 5 oceans. The Arctic Ocean is now one, right? Right. Hold on, not the Arctic. What is it? What's the other one they added? Whatever the newest one is, right? But see, technically, there's only four continents, right? And I know this is a bad map I'm about to show you, but it is what it is, right? Because I know it's the projection, and look, there's really no particularly better than other projection map. I mean, well, there's certain projection maps that are better than others, but when you get to a certain point, we can't really exactly do the projection thing correctly. This is one that's really bad, though. So I will fully admit to you, I recognize this projection map is extremely bad, right? The one that we normally use, because it's very Eurocentric, and it's very much so like, for example, on your maps, Africa's probably like 3 times bigger than what it is, right? South America is probably about 2.5 big times bigger than what it is. Greenland is 8 times bigger than what it's supposed to be. The United States of America is something like 2 or 3 times bigger than it's supposed to be, right? Canada is way smaller than what it's supposed to be on here. Russia is extremely so much smaller than what it's supposed to be. And by the way, Europe is crazy because Europe doesn't even fit in, Europe, like all of at least the main parts of what you consider to be Europe, they all pretty much fit inside of, like, East Coast, the United States, like, what you consider to be Europe. You can people take trains and go through several countries in Europe easily, just like, right. You can't even do that with states, with certain states. Maybe you can do it with Jersey, New York, or maybe Rhode Island or something like that, but you can't, right? Maybe Delaware, but you can't in 7, 8 hours go through like 5 states like that in the United States of America. You can't do that, but you could do something like that in Europe, right? So Europe is extremely tiny, right? Right. Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you for being on and learning, right? But so this is a bad projection map. I admit it, and everything that's on the projection map, when we look at it, you got to realize everything that's in the north is supposed to be smaller. Everything that's in the south is supposed to be bigger. They literally made it like this. They made the United States bigger. They made Europe bigger. They made Russia bigger, and they made China smaller. They made Australia smaller as well. So all the places where indigenous people basically were, at least where we focus on where they were taken from, South America included, we kind of just made them smaller over time, right? But but when you look at this, basically we discover something pretty easily to show you that there cannot be 7 continents and there cannot be 4 or 5 oceans. You ready? Right? Even with their stuff, even in his story, you can find truth. How you doing, Sister Dawn? You said, where is it at 30 years old? It's just a cultural thing. In our culture, you can't be a rabbi without being 30 years old. Yashua is one person that we see wasn't a rabbi. I mean, pretty much if you look at any rabbi, customarily, even in the Bible, you won't find one that's less than 30, right? You might find a prophet. You might find somebody in training. You might find a king, but you won't find a rabbi, right? So it's just a cultural thing. But yeah, exactly. I know. Thank you so much for bringing that out. So once again, this is a terrible projection of a map, right? This is a terrible projection map. There are many different projection maps you can use that are better than this. None of them are actually perfect. But at the end of the day, yes, it's a terrible one. My point still remains. So thanks for being on. Appreciate you. So the point that I'm trying to make is this, because we just came from a Pangea map. I'm trying to show people about a continent, right? So let's deal with. So now that we got that together, and if that's your way of once again saying hello, how are you doing? Now that we got that out the way, right? The projection map, or I'm sorry, the map in general, the continents is what I was focusing on. We could use even something like this to show you that there cannot be 7 continents by definition, and there cannot be 4 or 5 oceans by definition, right? Okay, there cannot be. You ready? Let's deal with the continents. What is the definition of a continent? To be an elder, if you're talking about to be a preacher, things like that. Depends on how we're defining elder, but I'll get back to it in a second. I'll get back to you in a second, I promise. Um, right? So, so what is the definition of a continent? I know they changed everything, right? But they can't. We shouldn't go away from origins. Now, what is the definition? The original definition of a continent. We got to start there. A large, yeah. And how you doing, Jay? It is, and amen, Sister Nadine. I see you too. It is a large landmass completely surrounded by water. That is how a continent is defined. Okay, a large landmass completely surrounded by water. Okay. So, question for you. By that definition, I know this is a bad map. Once again, it's a bad projection map. But by that definition, can Europe be a continent? Is Europe a large landmass completely surrounded by water? No, cannot be, right? By that definition, can Asia be considered to be a continent? No, it cannot, because it would have to be a large landmass, which it is, but is it completely surrounded? No. I tried to cook. No. Matter of fact, can Africa, this is gonna mess with you, because I know people want to be Afrocentric and separated so much, but can Africa, by that definition, be called a continent? No, because it is not completely, right, surrounded by water. Yep, and at one point it was called Eurasia, and before it was called Eurasia, it was just over there, right? Or it might be called part of Asia, or Moors who were over there probably would have just called it part of Africa. Remember, Carthaginians, right? Carthaginians, who you talking about, had territory all around here, right? Carthaginians, way before the Moors. We're talking about before the Greeks had power. Carthaginians put their capital in Spain. Y'all forgot about that? They put their capital over here in Spain. Carthaginians were going all up through here. We have this weird concept, once again, because we gotten into, teachings to separate us as people from so much. And we forget Carthaginians were in there. They're the first people to tell people about the word negro, because negros, the most ancient negros, were people who were from West Africa. That's why when chattel slavery and everything happens, right? And it starts to happen with the Pope, they went looking for a place that eventually you would see in the 1700s on the map still that they called Negro land. They went from here, learning about Negroes from these people down here who came up and told them what a Negro was. They eventually go right back down here, and then they call this place Negro land, right here. You see that? So we have this weird philosophy that like they just found out yesterday. No, like they were taught this a long time ago. Spain, which they were going up, when I told you they made their capital there, Spain was not a country until 1491. See, in your mind, you think that you just hear Spain. Spain was not a country until 1491. So Spanish is a language, right? Espanol is a language. It was not even something considered to be a language. España was not a place until 1491. So people were connected through this stuff all the time. Right. So all of this right here would be one continent according to your modern definition of a continent, your more modern definition of a continent. All of these are a continent. It's all one. Right? Using the same stuff. Now we can surmise, because Australia would really be bigger. So we can say, yeah, Australia would be a continent. No problem with that. We can say that, all right, according to here, we have no problem saying that Antarctica would be a continent. No problem with that. Right? When we get over here, we have to ask the same question now. Right? Now remember, Greenland is way smaller than this. Greenland's like more like this, right? But Greenland All this over here, right? Canada, Mexico, Guatemala, all this stuff, all the way down to Chile, Argentina, right? Brazil in there, Uruguay, Paraguay, etc. Is North America a continent? Is it a large landmass completely? Nope. Wait a minute, let me try the other way. Maybe it'll work the other way. Nope. It is not a large landmass completely surrounded by water. South America, which, yes, once again, bad projection map. How you doing, Sir Stephen? Right, South America, right? Is it a large landmass completely surrounded by? Nope. Okay, hold on, baby. If I go the other way, nope. So North America and South America, according to what you call the continent, would be a what? It would be North America and South America is one continent. By the way, in law, right? By the way, in law, this is why, as much as you don't like law, you should study law and start going off of legalese and look for law. According to law, according to law, right? According to what? According to law, the original American is a copper-colored person or who is indigenous to the Americas. So the Americas was one continent. It wasn't until certain people became world powers that now you had to have more than one continent over here. So they knew everybody over here was considered to be an American as long as you were copper-colored and indigenous. That's a fact. According to Western law, the people who came over here, when they came over here, they saw copper-colored people. When they came over here, they saw copper-colored people. They said all of those, we call them what? Americans. Now, what becomes interesting, though, this is why you got to start realizing you're a diaspora and stop even getting off of this native stuff or whatever, even before we get into natives all being called Negroes, just like black folk who came over from here, or African folk who came over from here were called Negroes, or Asiatic folk who came over were Negroes, whichever way you want to go, or Israelites who came over were called Negroes. Y'all were all mixed together, or all bred together, right? So I know you want to go ahead and do the separation thing. You can't do it even if you want to, right? Right? But let's do it like this, right? They call the Europeans, they came over here, they called everybody over here Americans. Little did they know, though, that Mali was already coming over to Brazil. Little did they know, Christopher Columbus had to tell them in Spain that, hey, I used to travel with Africans for the last 10 years at least. He admitted it's probably way more, it's just what we have on paper. But he said for at least 10 years, I've been traveling with Africans. And they told me about this place called the Land of Asaroth. The Land of Asaroth was supposed to be a place to where Negroes or Israelites had been. Now, Spanish people called Israelites Negroes as well. Interesting. See, and when you learn about this stuff, see, we just talking about continents. When you learn about how they looked at continents, you start having to say to yourself, yeah, I just used to skip social studies. I actually liked social studies at first, but it wasn't for me. After a while, I realized it wasn't true. And then I skipped, like, what was it, civics, I think, whatever that class was called. Right? So when I come from, well, that's great if you're building a place for us all. Let's see what the law and everything looks for it to be able to make sure that, we'll make sure the bylaws and everything are something to keep us all like-minded. But I appreciate it. That's what we're trying to do ourselves, right? Maybe we can partner up at some point, who knows, down the road, and keep expanding stuff together. But so when you're having this conversation about continents, you got to recognize this is something that gets you off track, right? Like everything is there to make sure that you feel like you deserve to be conquered by somebody, right? So just off the continents, let me finish the continent thing and then we'll get back into what I'm saying. So off the continents things, technically here, there's only what? There's only one continent, two continents, three continents, four. North America and South America are the Americas, one continent. Asia, Africa, Europe, that makes two continents. Australia makes three continents, right? And then Antarctica makes four continents. There's only four continents if you want to go modern, but technically, if you want to go by the original, which we just showed you, Pangea, If you want to go by the original before this stuff fell apart, well, guess what? All of your continents are still connected underwater, which means they're all one anyway. So technically, there's only one continent. That's how you get your internet. I know you in your mind it's wireless and it just comes down from the heavens now. It comes down from the heaven. But no, you still got wires and you still got cables and your feed, your satellite, your little satellite dish on the top of your roof, it don't go all the way to the heaven. All right. It doesn't go all the way to the satellite that's going around the world. That's not how that works. Right? Your satellite specifically, your satellite is basically wireless to a certain degree, even though there has to be a wire up to the satellite, and that wire is something that is connected, eventually getting all the way into the water. Your internet. The reason why somebody right now can listen to us in the United Kingdom, right? The reason why somebody can listen to us in Australia, the reason why somebody can be in Africa and listen to this, right, in contact, and we connect with each other, right, is because there's cables in the water, right, and the cables in the water run across some of the ground, some of the ground that's still connected one to another. So they operate as you being one continent worldwide, while they have you above the surface. On the surface level, they got you believing that you separated into seven. This is why it's often weird to me when they say, don't consider yourself to be African, you're just an American. No, we shouldn't be separate. Look, we want the ground that you stand on over there is connected to the ground I stand on over here. If you run your business like that, why can't I run my mindset like that? How you doing, Spike Man? So they don't operate off of separate continents. They don't have that belief system. They teach you to have that belief system, but they don't operate off of seven continents. They know better. They couldn't give you the technology that you crave if they operated the way that they want you to believe. There is no separation of, you're not just a landmass floating out there. You're connected to something solid. So there's really only one continent. Yeah, Christopher Columbus was a loan shark, Jewish and stuff like that, and he was also a sailor. And Christopher Columbus, he got arrested for what he did and things like that. But Christopher Columbus had enough sense, being Jewish, to be able to say, "Hey, let me take an Israelite interpreter with me. Let me take a Hebrew interpreter, somebody that speaks Hebrew," because they knew the people that were over here, right? That they were already starting to dive into people in Negro land and take them because they were looking for the same Negroes, which we now today would call a Sephardic Jew, but back then they called them Negroes. And they said they were Israelite faith, and they said they were swarthy, and they said they had locks, and they said that they were very interested in women. In other words, their men were not bisexual. I'm not trying to speak bad against those who are bisexual. I'm just trying to say it wasn't our culture, right? So they said, oh, they're really attracted to women. That was code for a lot of our men go both ways. Their men don't seem to do that. They just want to be with women. They started putting us in black hoodies, and we would be out in black hoodies on the street corners, and somebody would be playing music, playing an instrument, and somebody would put poetry over music. You call that today, you call that hip hop, right? You would say, oh, I'm going through town today. It wouldn't surprise me if I saw some dude on the corner with his radio playing, and he had a microphone and he was spitting, and he had a little cup, hoping that you might put something in it. History repeats. How you doing, Lynette? Thanks for being on. If I didn't say so already. How you doing, Kira? I'm sorry, Sister Dawn, I didn't come back to your question. My bad. Do I have to be a certain age to be an elder? So I was saying earlier, just real quick to finish that up, my bad. To be an elder, it depends on what we call an elder. I would say to be an elder, you should probably be an elder, somebody that's there. But see, we kind of use modern terms today. Technically, terms like, for example, even pastor. Now, pastor really is talking about a pastor over sheep, and therefore it's talking about somebody who should be Shemitic. So it should actually be a bloodline thing in order to be a pastor, but I'll leave that to the side. But a lot of these words we use are not our words, so it's difficult to try and equate them. But a rabbi is a teacher. So rabbi, if you're going to be considered to be a teacher, like Israelite version of a jelly or jelly liyat or things like that, if you're going to be a teacher of the word or even a historian, things like that, they look for a certain age range. So yeah. To be an elder in the terms that we use today, in church terms, things like that that we use today, um, is like a little different. Elder, we're more so nowadays saying we see that you have a gift, and we're basically saying you're ordained. Ordained is that we believe that you will keep the ordinances and you keep law. Not in church, because in church, ordained means that you can say that you were ordained to be a pastor and tell people not to follow law. But by law, right, an ordinance has, like, in order to be ordained, you got to keep an ordinance. You got to follow statutes, right? This is why all these people who are ordained, they always have to be ordained through the state. Well, depending on how you do it, we don't ordain through the state. We ordain through our community. We ordain through our people. And yes, I'm gonna start using this word. Just had a discussion with some people yesterday. We are ordained as far as what we do through our membership. I'm gonna start using that word. We're gonna start writing out some things as far as our membership. We're writing out a lot of stuff at the same time, but we'll start writing some stuff out for membership so there are clear indicators on what we do here. Right? We still family. I like to call us family, but I guess on paper, just to make sure I was shown the light a little bit more as far as it being okay to say we are members. So, and hey, the Bible says we are members fitly joined together. We're members of the body, so we can be members. Why not? But yeah, so elder is one of those tricky things to get into because it's like, I mean, what we talking about? What version are we doing? What is that elder going to do? Like elders, like elders in my community, I think of elders, the word elder used to be something else. Now, also, we have to, so you see, this question is going to take me down a rabbit hole, but let's go there, right? This question is going to take me down a rabbit hole, but let's go there, right? Um, And by the way, when I talk membership too, that means at some point we're gonna have to make sure we send those of you who are interested in membership. We're gonna have to send you guys something specific to say thank you for being a member, this and that, and with something that's written out temporarily to go into some bylaws and stuff like that. So it is what it is, but we want to make sure that we do that, right? So I was shown the light on that last night. So we're gonna make sure that we shape that correctly, because that's one of the things that's been slowing me down on writing this stuff out. Some of the stuff is because of like, well, what are we calling ourselves? Do I really want to do the member? And I think what was brought to my attention was, they're like, Kofi, you probably just doing that because the whole worried about this, the church hurt thing, or trying to get away from some of these terms, but they were like, like we got this, we strong enough to be able to do what we need to do, and we ain't tripping off of no word like member or something like that. So I was like, okay, so just letting you know that. So we'll be working on that, and we'll have some stuff to y'all soon. So it's still gonna be different. We're not gonna become a church. I got people sometimes when we mention, like we mentioned at some point, we might have to have, even though we don't call them deacons. I had mentioned to somebody a while ago, about deacons, this and that, and a few people have been like, deacons, so we're gonna be a church and blah blah. And this, no, like we're not going into a church. We're doing what the Bible says. The Bible has deacons in it. You know what I'm saying? But you know, so, but anyways, get into the elder thing. So that's actually a pretty interesting thing within itself. This is why I make sure I say words correctly. And how you doing, Molly? And thank you so much for things that you've been doing behind the scenes. Appreciate you. I haven't had a chance to tell you, but appreciate you. So this is why I use words correctly. You notice I don't say Elohim. I try to stay away from it as much as possible, unless I'm trying to teach on what difference is, right? Alacham. Alacham is what I'd say, because Al is different than El. So elders is a tricky word too, because it doesn't necessarily mean exactly what we think elder means. That person is older, but old is not the same as El. Old is not the same as El, right? So someone who's older, someone who's an elder, right, is something different, right? You say you call them soldiers, right? So the word El is different than the word Al, right? El And this is where people get stuff, and this is what, see, you guys have heard people come on here and they'll be like, well, you believe in Elohim, or you believe in El, or you believe in El, well, you believe in El or Baal, or they don't even say it right. They say Baal, but they're saying Baal because they don't realize they're saying Baal, right? That's what you're saying. You're not saying Baal. Baal and Baal are not even the same thing, right? They're not, right? Baal is a change up from Baal. Yes, I believe in Elohim. Elohim, because Al is what you would actually call him in the Hebrew characters. El comes from somebody else. El can be applied to anything, right? That's why it's not Samuel, it would be Samava'al. That's why it's not Emmanuel, it would be Amanava'al. Now, I get where people are because of what you've been taught, the language that you choose, and some people are going to ride with that, even if it's negative, even if I were to give you the evidence, they're going to ride till you die. You got every right to do that. You don't. Once something's presented to you, if you want to follow it, if you want to believe it, if you want to study it, and not just dismiss it, that's always up to you, right? But El is different than Am. So there's truth when somebody says, well, the devil is, well, this is what they try to tell you. The devil and God are the same person. The answer to that is kind of. But see, I don't worship God. God is a Germanic deity. God can be whatever you want him to be, including El. I don't know if this is going to be, hopefully somebody going to catch this. I don't know if we're going to catch this or not. I'm going to put this out here, right? But Elohim is different than Elohim. And people just go, no, that's just word usage. Sometimes it's word usage. Sometimes it's dialect. Sometimes it's somebody giving you a different reference point, right? Al is something different than El. First of all, in Hebrew, we don't have a character that sounds like Eh. So already we have to say, what are you doing there, right? Because we don't have an eh sound. Those of you who were with us and brought the babies on, and thank you everybody yesterday who brought the children on, the adults who stayed on, and we had a longer session than what I thought it was going to be. And those who hung in there, especially the babies, if you hung in the whole time, we appreciate you, right? You said this is meat and not milk. Amen. Okay, let's go ahead and heat it up then, right? Because that milk will turn to pus and ain't gonna be no righteous anyways, right? So we got to give it to them when they're cool. Let's heat it up. Let's heat up a little bit. Praise y'all. Thanks for that, right? So let's go. El is not talking about what you think it's talking about. El, remember I told you about the whole, matter of fact, those who had class last night, we kind of touched on this. So you guys are kind of already got an introductory into what I'm going into. Those who did Black's Law Dictionary 1 class, and we went down that rabbit hole for people, or for person, the definition of it. You said you looked everywhere for that class. Which class? If so, text us, email us. And it will get back to you. The DM thing, maybe I can get back to you, maybe not. We're actually working on doing the shout out. We're going to start doing the shout out a little bit differently and more effectively as well for those that are trying to take help us to make sure we do things behind the scenes better. And we're looking at getting the app out to you guys soon, that you guys can start participating in some of the stuff and writing stuff in, and we can communicate through the app to each other to help things move faster. Kind of sort of like Discord, but a little more focused just on us. Oh, it's Brianna and Brian. Oh, you looked for the class from last night? I had to look again and make sure you guys got the email then, because it should be. It should be. We had a class last night, so I apologize for it. But we can send you the recording if you weren't able to make it, or since you weren't able to make it, I'll try to see why you guys weren't on there. Maybe I need to redo your information in there. But so watch this. So when we're talking about these different things, right? Oh, you talking about the family Zoom? Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I apologize. I tried to copy and paste everything that we did from the last SOC meeting. So if we do an SOC meeting, that same SOC community meeting, if it says SOC community meeting, if you ever got that link, that's the same link that we're going to use. Yeah. So if you see SOC community meeting, if you have that link, if you're able to save that link, or I don't know, or whatever, but if you have that link, that'll be the link we use every single time. All right. every single time when we meet up for an SOC community meeting. And I mean, any of them. If there's an SOC community meeting for your area, if there's an SOC community meeting for the United States of America, for the world, whatever, for Jamaica, for England, whatever, it's going to be the same link. Okay. So I apologize about that if you didn't get the link. Whenever we talk about this stuff, always look to see if you got a Google Calendar invite or whatever. And if the day of or something like that, or even the day before, if you see that you still haven't gotten it, we keep talking about we're going to have a meeting, feel free to contact us and be like, hey, I still don't have it. And we'll make sure that we send it to you. Okay. Or even somebody, in Philly, in your area, we will have somebody soon who will be reaching out to you guys for us. So soon you'll be able to reach out to somebody else as well in case I can't get back to you soon enough. They should be able to help you out too. Okay. How you doing, Sister Rachel? Thanks for being on with us. Right. So you said any for Canada? Yeah. So we try to include, I guess all of Canada right now is kind of included in our northeast mid, what do we call y'all? Central North region. In America, eventually as time moves on, we'll have to separate it from some, but most of us, not all, but most of us that are in Canada are in the Ontario, which is huge, of course, but the Ontario, area, territory, or not territory. Why am I? The Ontario, forgive me. I'm sorry, I'm having a moment right now, but yeah, we kind of have all of you guys kind of included in that. At some point, we'd like to make sure that you guys kind of have your own separate thing going too, right? You're in Ontario, okay, cool. So yeah, so we're working on something like that. If you even down the road, those that are in Ontario or in Canada in general, if y'all want to help out with putting something like that, thank you, the province. That's what I was looking for. So if you're in that province or whatever, or if you're just in the country, period, and you want to be able to help us with developing something, I know Ms. Mac, somebody who's behind the scenes, been making sure people stay connected and stuff as well. So we're working on it. And getting some stuff instituted. You guys aren't that far. We do Detroit, so you guys aren't that far from us. Next time we do Detroit, make it a hop, skip, and a jump. Over the border and being right there to do a meetup. Now, some of you, depending on how far you are, we have to give you all some advance on when we be there and see if we can set something up where everybody can come together and kind of fellowship. But yeah, so it's something we're working on. It's something we're working on. But let's see. Where was I? I'm sorry. Where was I at? I don't even know. Praise God. We got what we needed to get out there. Amen. But yeah, for class information, stuff like that. Or not class information, for the SOC community meeting, just let us know. The DMs, I'm not going to be able to do as many of those, by the way. That's why we're trying to find a more effective way, because it was brought to my attention that depending on where we are on our flow of how many people are on at the time, and we kind of go with ebbs and flows, it might not always be as practical for us, and it might be a waste of time in a sense for us to be doing other things we could be doing for you guys. So we're going to look at doing the shout outs a little different eventually, to where we're going to allow you guys to kind of reach out to us. And even though I like reaching out to you guys, if you guys reach out to us, it's just basically something that I'll be reaching right back out to you anyways, but it might be more practical for us to do it that way. So just kind of hang in there. We'll keep the shout out the same probably for today, but maybe tomorrow I'll start messing around with it. Just to let that be known. Oh, Elohim, thank you. So El and Al. So El is something that was used by Druids and even now this is where you get into the Canaanite and the Israelite as far as belief system. This is when you get into the Moabite, or the Midianite, right? The Balaam Doctrine, even like we've been talking about, and the Israelite, right? Balaam Doctrine shifting something slightly to be able to get somewhere else. This is where you get into we just talked about this. We did a series on this not too long, or maybe not a series. We did a word on this not too long ago. Esau. This is where you get to the Esau mountaintop and the Zion or Jacob's mountaintop, right? This is where we start getting to this. So El is something that was used and then taken into Canaanite views as well, and then taken into shifting over. We already showed you how easily it could shift. People don't know that. Like Canaanites were also people who called themselves Canaanites, who also some of them mixed with Israelite blood, but they were the people who you would call Carthaginians. These Carthaginians were already going into Europe, things like that. In Europe, you had Druids, right? So if you follow it, you actually can see where these people come from, right? And so the Druids, right, are following something they were given that was really Canaanite. The Canaanites are given something that's falsehood. And instead of saying Al, they started using this term El. Now, when they use the term El or use the word El, they're using the word El and changing it up. They're saying something specific. They're not talking about when you say Al, Alacham, or Baal, right? Because even remember, a lot of people don't know this, but when you talk about Yerushalayim, when you talk about Jerusalem, the king of Shalom was who? At the time of Abraham, when Abraham helped to free all these places in Canaan, right? When he went to free Lot, he freed a bunch of places and he gave a tithe, which would be the reason why he put a down payment on what Israel would go into later on, right? When he made his down payment, he made a tithe to Melchizedek. Melchizedek was the prince of Shalom, or the prince of Salam, or the king of Yarashalam, Jerusalem, as you would say today, right? He was the king of that. So he being the king of Shalom, being the king of peace, right? He worshiped Baal, not Baal or not Baal. He worshiped Baal. And all the stuff I'm saying, by the way, you can look up. There's research that's been done. They found thousands upon thousands. Some people say hundreds of thousands of what we would call documents today. They would call scrolls, and some of it just straight up on stone tablets. But over time, all these things that have been kept of how things went from Baal over time to turning into Baal. And Baal used to be their title for Yahweh. So we say Yahweh Elohim, they would say Yahweh Baal. Baal was still Al, Elohim. Just like people before they would become Muslim, and even some people who are Muslim to a certain extent, which we don't talk about, but people before in some of the places before you would call them now Muslim, or you now use this term called Arabic, which used to just mean nomadic. So technically, even Israelites are Arabic because we're nomadic people, just like many native people are Arabic because we're nomadic people. But nevertheless, we use these terms differently now, right? But you will hear them say Allah. Why? Because that is short for Alacham. And Ishmael would have said Allah, or those coming out of Ishmael, it would make sense that they would shorten it and have a nickname or something in their sect, right? Or different sects or different belief system, or just as far as their thought process, Allah. But those who were Israel, those who were coming through Isaac, would keep Alacham. And if you look at it even more so, there are some people who worship Alacham, but will still refer to him as Allah. Right? But so Al is something that's dealing with the Most High, right? Al also can mean in and of itself to be by one side. So when Alacham made Adam and Eve, here's a little aside for the married folk. When Alacham made Adam and Eve, right? He made Adam and he took Eve out of his side. We always do the rib thing, but that word that we try to always translate into rib just means she was taken out of his side. Now we can say one of the things that was taken out of him was a rib, but she was taken out of his side. That word side there would be al. It would be al, not el. It would be al. So the beginning of Alacham, even al, it could be short for the Most High's position or title, right? His name is Yahweh. His title is Alacham, but the beginning of it, al, also can stand for the side, which means Alacham is by our side. He is married to us. We were taken out of his side the way that Eve was taken out of our side. This is a little something for us. That's just a little something for you to go ahead and kind of keep in your little memory banks, keep in your back pocket when y'all be arguing and stuff. Stop arguing as opponents and argue from somebody who's supposed to be out. The Most High is joined to your side, and He's joined you together. And a threefold cord is not easily broken. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. All right. Okay. But anyways, so Al is different than El. So when they started using El is something dealing with a deviancy. El is something that they were using as far as a 2-in-1 thing. So those of you like I said last night, who take Black's Law Dictionary 1 with us, we went over this a lot. We kind of went down a little version of the rabbit hole. I won't go down too much of it today. But those who were on class last night, you guys are going to get even a little extra than what you got last night, to put it with that. L, especially when you start getting to the Druids now, right? But it's coming from Edom, it's coming from Canaan, it's coming from a perverted mindset. You have to realize that in Canaan, a lot of those tribes, they had a system back then that today you would call, or they used something back then that today you would call a fictitious entity, or you might call a straw man. We think the straw man just happened today. We think the straw man might have just happened with the United States, or maybe it just happened with Britain, or maybe it just happened with Rome. The straw man goes all the way back to Canaan. And they realized that you could have a real version of a person, right? But you can't really enslave, right, a real version of a person. Even today, right? Supposedly, even though we know the 13th Amendment will tell you that that's not exactly true, but supposedly all these great countries tell you that slavery is illegal. Supposedly. But all of them still have slaves. Right? I'm not making this up. Supposedly, slavery is illegal. But all these places still seem to have slaves. How do you do that? Slavery is illegal, but everybody got slaves. Right? How do we work that? Well, because there's a question that must be asked. This is what we asked to begin our class last night. Are you a person? Do you have a person? Or are you a person who has a person? Sounds confusing if you don't know what I'm talking about as far as a fake person. But we got to ask the question. Are you a person? Do you have a person? Are you a person that carries a person with you? You see? That when you start asking that question, that question was got me to go down the rabbit hole that had our class take a whole different turn last night. But see, are you a person? Are you a person that has a person? I'm sorry, are you a person? Do you have a person, or are you a person who has a person? When you carry your wallet around and all that identification you talk about in there, you are a person who carries another person. And what you do every time you pull out that card that's got your name in all caps, every time that you pull out that Social Security card, every time you use that birth certificate, every time you use that passport that you didn't fill out correctly when you should have filled out your DS-11 form a certain way, you are somebody who's pulling out another person, putting it on the table, and signing the documentation. And I won't go too deep into what we talked about in class last night, right? And there's some things that I don't even have the pictures and stuff ready to go for y'all to be able to share. But I'll say this. Do some research. I'll give you one thing. This is a bonus for those of you who aren't taking this class. I'll just share a little something with you that they got last night. Here's a little bonus for you. When you sign your check, hear me, Israel. When you sign your check, those of you who still even do such things as write checks out and sign them. It used to be a thing that we did. Young people that are on, there used to be these little things that we had. They were like so big, and we would actually have to write, a check certain places in order to get certain things, or certain places even they would hold a check to to if you messed up, they could go ahead and get their money from you, right? But for those of you who used to write checks a lot, some of you might still write checks from time to time. Some people who still have checkbooks. When you look on when you write a check, how do you sign? Or I'm sorry, where do you sign on the checkbook? Don't get esoteric. Don't get super mystical. Stay practical for me. Right? Yeah, we got to explain checks to people nowadays, for real. Like, it's like when I was trying to do like this the other day, and I had to remember I was talking to little babies, and I had to go like this. When I go like this to an adult, they know, oh yeah, you on the phone. So if I go like that to a child, they don't know what I'm doing. If I go like this, they know I'm on the phone because their phones look different. It's crazy, right? How fast stuff changes. This is why you got to make sure you keep up with certain things, right? Okay, so when you have a check, you said I have a checkbook, you sign the bottom right. And what do you sign on? What do you sign on? What do you sign in the bottom right? I'm gonna just give you a little something from class last night. You get a little, you privy to a little something tonight. You sign on the line, you sign on the dotted line. Okay. Now watch this. If you can get your hands on the checkbook sometimes, right? I want you to go ahead and look on the bottom of that check. I don't know if I even have anything. I mean, I have one. I don't know how it's going to show up. Okay, it shows up all right on here. So when you look on this and you sign a check, right? You sign your check on the bottom right hand portion, right? That's what we've been told, right? But on the bottom right hand portion where you're supposed to sign, there's two letters that show up on the side. It's called, and those two letters are MP, right? Those two letters are MP, right? Y'all with me? I want to make sure. Okay, y'all with me? Okay. They say MP. Guess what that means whenever you see that MP on that signature line or dotted line that you think it is? Whenever you see MP on any document, it means you need to pull out a magnifying glass or something that can magnify it enough to be able to read it. On any, it doesn't just show up on checks, by the way. It shows up on a lot of different things, right? And a check, by the way, is a contract. It is a binding contract. So you need to know what you're signing. So when you see MP on any document, it's telling you need to pull out a magnifying glass. Did you know that? Listen, what's the name of that movie? I don't know why I like these movies so much, but the two Nicolas Cage movies they did, I think I like it because one of them, my father is like an extra in the background. You don't even know what you're looking for, but he worked at the Library of Congress at the time. What is that movie? When they're looking for all that stuff and they got to keep pulling out magnifying glasses, it's National Treasure. There's some National Treasure type stuff here. Y'all thought that was just a movie. They tell you the truth in some of this stuff. They don't tell you a lot of truth, or they don't outright. But see, MP, it's microprint. You got to be ready to look with a magnifying glass. There's about to be some National Treasure type stuff. People don't be believing you. Now, I've heard some, and I'm going to say the same thing I said in class yesterday. And by the way, all the stuff we talk about is, I have to say this, for educational purposes only. All right. You see you're on recording somewhere. So somebody can't say, oh, you're wrong, blah, blah. Somebody can say I'm lying. But do your research. I'm giving you receipts right now. You can go look. Right. I'm trying to show you how people double up on you and how Al and L, I'm just trying to give you a context. Look at that check, you'll see MP, anything that you see MP on. Now, I've heard from some people, I have not been able to prove this, so I don't have this receipt. I've heard from some people that there are some that you look at that have whole sentences written out that you need to be aware of what you're signing on. However, this is what your check actually says, right? This is what it actually states. It actually states authorized signature. It's not a line. Now, somebody says, well, what does that matter? Authorized signature. I mean, I'm authorizing it. But that's the problem, though. See? Because we don't know how law works. Y'all see that, right? Y'all see it says clear as day. I didn't make it up. Authorized signature, right? Now, I've heard from some people that different ones say different things, and then there's that. But I want you to see why authorized signature is crazy. And somebody caught this from class last night. As soon as I started talking about it, they already knew where I was headed. Right? Once it clicks, like once this clicks for you, it's gonna make sense. See, your name on a check. How does your name on a check show up? How do they write your name? How do they present your name on a check? How does your name on a check show up? Your name's gonna be in the top left-hand corner, that authorized signature piece on the bottom right-hand corner. How you doing, righteous warrior? How does your name show up on the check? It's in all caps, right? All caps means what? All caps means what? All caps means what now? Now we got all caps. Now help me out. All caps means what? Roll with me now. What are they saying when you put your name in all caps? All these bills, they put your name in all caps. On your bank card, name in all caps. What are they doing when they're putting your name in all caps? You're saying you're a corporation. They're saying you're an artificial person. Remember, I asked the question, are you a person? Do you have a person? Are you a person who has a person or a person who carries a person with you? They're saying, see, watch this. So in your signature, and the person, I don't know if I'm allowed to say who it was, and I don't want to bust them out. I don't want them to feel uncomfortable or whatever. But the person who said it, they immediately got it because they said, wait a minute. When I sign a document, I've been trained, I've been taught that my signature will have my first, have a capital letter for my first name and a capital letter for my last name. I was like, keep it going. I was getting excited because it was hitting, it was catching, right? So I said, keep it going. And they said, well, so then that means, right? Because if I do capital letter and then regular and then lowercase for the rest, and capital letter and lowercase for the rest for first and last name, that must mean that by law, that's my actual name. Because that's what England said, right? England, where we get this law from, that's what England declared, is that that's who you really are. When you put a capital letter and then all lowercase and then a capital letter, all lowercase, that's your actual person. That's your actual authority, correct? Yeah. So if this says authorized signature, and I put my signature, my actual self, what I'm saying is I am authorizing my actual person, my natural person, my real person, my actual human being. I'm signing saying that I give permission for you to use my straw man and enter me into a fictitious contract with a fictitious government and use currency which flows like water. Now, this part we didn't even get into last night. Right now, you're getting some bonus, right? And use currency that flows like water, right? Use currency that flows like water on the bank because the bank is the river bank, and currency got to flow in and out, but it's flowing in and out of a fictitious system. And the only thing that's allowed to be there is how much I decide that I want to be part of that system, how much I want to engage. So if I cooperate and become a corporation, I can do business with a corporation as the corporation sees fit and let the currency flow right there at the bank. You hear what I'm saying? This is law. We're talking maritime law now. We're talking law of admiralty now. I'm trying to show you how a quick switch up on something. They hit you with that legalese instead of that law. That's why every sovereign, when they take a class, we always say, "What you are the master." We always remind you. You must remind yourself that I am the master. I must be able to teach this. If I can't teach this, somebody gonna teach me. If I can't live this, somebody gonna live this for me. Amen, Sister Keisha. We'll keep you in prayer. Please keep Sister Keisha in prayer. You hear what I'm saying? This is they're doing this on purpose. And you're signing this stuff. And then if you ever say, well, I didn't know that said authorized signature. This is what they get to say. We never hid it from you. We put MP on the check. We put it right there in the corner. Why didn't you know that? Why didn't you study what MP meant? That's not our fault. We put it on there. You should know everything you're signing. You should have read the contract. And they're absolutely right. You should have. You should know what every number on that thing means. You should know what a dollar sign means. You should know what a dollar is backed up by. You should know that if you're saying you're going to do this business, for sure. Matter of fact, you know that you have a right to be able to do what with your check. You have a right to a certain degree to even tell them what you want on your check. Now, you like the background to be changed. You like the color to be changed. You want the cover that's on the checkbook to be changed. Tell them that you want your name not to be in all caps. See what they do. I mean, I should be able to make it look however I want, right? To get whatever business I want. That's what y'all said. Tell them that you want your name to be capital, capital in the beginning and the lowercase for the rest, capital in the beginning and lowercase for the rest. See what they do. Now watch this. There are people that work at the bank that don't even know what I just told you. This is why you have to be the master. You got to realize people are switching stuff in the smallest switch. That's what I'm saying. Will they? Think about it now. Will they, or will they say, well, we're not allowed to do that? Well, why aren't you allowed to do that? That's not my name. What do you mean that's not your name? That's not my name. That's not who I am. That's not even what my signature is. I'm not going to put my signature to match something that's not even my name. Because and you can show them in documentation, show them in ancient British law, show them in how you kept the same law, show them how common law comes from British law. And so we're going to take this and say this is common, including on how banks operate, right? Then I need you to comprehend that that's not common for me. It's not common for my culture. See what they do. They freak out. Now they freak out. Some of them freak out just because they're ignorant of it. They'll start thinking you might be crazy because of their ignorance. But some people freak out because they're like, oh, they're waking up. Yeah, as a child, I saw the authorized signature in capital letters and it got rejected. Mm. Okay, thank you, moderators. Appreciate y'all. You said you worked as a bank loan coordinator and new accounts and didn't know that the whole time. Yeah, because they don't. And how you doing, Jan? Thanks for being on, Jan. But they're not supposed to teach you that, right? So when people say, why y'all always talking about sovereignty? Why are you talking about Black's Law Dictionary? Why are you talking about, you need to know what they're doing. Don't assume that the person that works at the bank knows what they're doing. Don't assume that the person that works at the IRS knows what they're doing. Don't assume that the judge knows what they're doing. Don't assume that the lawyer knows what they're doing. Don't assume that the police officer, see, y'all got it twisted. Instead of saying ACAB, all cops are bad, how about say this? ACI, right? Or ACAI. A lot of cops are ignorant. ACAI. A lot of cops are ignorant. They have no clue how law works. By the way, a lot of cops were lawless when they got the gig. They had to lie to get the gig because you have to lie in order to become police officer. In most places, you have to lie and tell people that, oh yeah, I never had any issues. So they'll try to hire you. But the reality is everybody done did something dirty. There ain't nobody out there that ain't got no dirt on them, but they have to lie and say that they didn't do anything and hope that nothing gets caught so that they can become police officers. So they have to lie from the jump. The system is working the way it's supposed to, y'all. The system is working the way it's supposed to. Right? Don't get it twisted. The system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Exactly what it's supposed to do. Am I a Moor? I'm sure you can say I'm a Moor. I don't now if you say, well, I'm a Moor, but depending on how our Moorish brethren will take it, do I identify as a Moor as far as nationality? No, but the Moor doesn't have a nationality. Now, if you're talking about a Moroccan, my people, even though I can say some of my people are Moroccan, but I'm not. I don't identify. I'm a non-citizen national, but I know I'm a Moor by who I'm from. You said that's the same for credit. I'm sorry. Oh, as far as credit. Well, it depends on what we're talking about credit. But remember, credit used to just mean that you had access. Like credit used to mean I paid you. So, Sister Gertrude, credit used to mean I pay you $500, and then I come back to you. I pay you $500 in advance. Then I come to you and I'm like, hey, I need you to make a shirt for me. You go, okay, cool. The shirt that you looking for me to make, for me to get the material, do all this, is gonna be like $75. Okay, cool, no problem. And then you make it for me. I have $425 credit. Still, that's what credit used to mean, right? Now, what does credit mean? Right now, what does credit mean? Credit means if you pay off debt really well, we'll let you get more debt. We'll give you $250 on a card. Let's see what you do with it over a year. You know what? You've been paying pretty well on this $250 card. You go into debt $250 and then you pay us back and you pay us back interest. Thank you so much. We'd like to up that. Let's see what you do with $500. Okay, cool. We'd like to up that. Let's see if you can get $1,000 in debt. Oh man, you know what? You're doing really well. Let's give you $20,000. Before you know what, you do really well with debt. Let's give you a black card and let's give you points. If you spend this credit card and you do this, we'll give you points. And every once in a while, we'll throw in a free shirt, or we'll give you a free flight somewhere. If you fly 50 times this year, one of those flights will probably end up on us. Bling bling. That's great. That's kind of what they do, right? Chris Rock has an old joke. Chris Rock has an old joke. Basically goes, y'all think Shaq is wealthy. Shaq's not wealthy. Shaq is rich. The one who gives Shaq his check, he's wealthy. And you're like, oh, you want to get? He's like, here you go. You want to get some? You want to get some rims on those cars? Here you go, Shaq. Bling bling. And when I heard that when I was younger, I was like, got it. You know what I'm saying? That always stuck to me. I got it. Got that. Right? But yeah, credit is interesting to talk about in and of itself. Credit, especially when you have creditors that call you, because creditors, they only call you because they had to buy your debt. So if somebody bought your debt, especially if you didn't agree with the company that you had the contract with, and so you stopped paying them because they were dishonorable, and so now the credit company, the creditor, buys the debt, and then they call you up and they're like, "Hey, we're calling because you still owe whatever business this money." You're like, "No, I don't owe them any money." "Oh, yes, you do." "No, I don't. That's why I stopped paying them." "Well, we're here to collect on their behalf." "Well, you're not going to collect on their behalf. Matter of fact, you already bought the debt. Since you bought the debt, I'll let you keep it. Thank you very much." You might have to learn how to write a cease and desist to go along with that. But that's all we're doing. So yeah, so it's very interesting. But that Al and El thing is them finding that Al is the real name of the Most High. El is what? It's a straw man. So somebody's right to say El. Like for example, people who are in the Saturnalia, this is Druid stuff. People that are in the Saturnalia, right? The winter solstice stuff. People that are in the Saturnalia, Saturn for them, right? One of the things they call Saturn was El, not Al, but El. Before you call it Saturn in the West, in the East, they call it El. So be careful, because you'll think, oh yeah, they're just saying Elohim. That's just the way they pronounce it. No, no. Alacham is way different than Elohim. It's not always as simple as we just pronounce it different. Sometimes it's because, see, remember, don't live in the fallacy that there's any that these people be making mistakes as much as you think. Don't live in the fallacy that there's any such thing as coincidence. Everything that happens for a reason. And if it happens for a reason, it means it happens because of an effect. If it happens because of an effect, that means that there was a cause. Right? If there's an effect to something, that means there was a cause. So that's what I was talking about, Al and El. I'm sorry, Minister Sharon. Hopefully you're still on. You said, can it be said that Balaam doctrine is using your gifts for ill gain? In a sense, yeah, that's part of it. Now, once again, the main thing about Balaam doctrine is a doctrine that somebody's trying to use to be able to ensure that they can come. Balaam doctrine specifically, strategically, right, was something that was tried to be created, right? Balak was trying to get Balaam to specifically create something so that Israel would not be able to flourish because of his fear that Israel would take over them, even though Israel was not supposed to be dealing with Midian, right? So specifically, Balaam doctrine is pointing towards something that's coming at Israel or coming at the kingdom of heaven, etc. But yes, obviously Balaam considered it at first. Why? Because he wanted to get paid. He wanted to get paid. So he wanted to get paid. He was willing to go ahead and try and come up with a whole doctrine just so that he can go ahead and get paid. Now, a lot of people, you got to ask, what's your price? A lot of people want to get paid in a lot of different ways. You'd be surprised how many people will take up all types of mess in relationships because they want to have sex. Right? That's payment. You'd be surprised how many people just want a pat on the back. And so they'll go ahead and do all types of stuff. You'd be surprised at how many people run out in street gangs and stuff, and they're actually genuinely very nice, sweet people. And you're like, not you. How could you be the person? Because they don't get the love, or at least they feel like they can't get the love from other people, but they get it from the gang life. So they go out and do some of the most disgusting things that you would never be in your mind. You could never even think of them as being in the same stratosphere as that, or at least have the same wavelength of thought process that would get them there. How you doing, Dakota? So a lot of this stuff you have to look at it correct. You said, how do you pivot from the system? Number one, you begin to live as a sovereign. Sovereign is not just a piece of paper. Sovereign is a lifestyle. Sovereignty is a lifestyle. Anything that you're doing that gets benefits or privileges from the system, you deserve to pay taxes and make sure that the system tells you what to do. So you have to begin to come out of it. And that's a process. It's not as simple. Like, we're literally developed, we just started teaching this semester for the first time Sovereignty 3. And each Sovereignty 1, Sovereignty 2, Sovereignty 3 are full 2-month courses, So, we're doing Black's Law Dictionary 1 now. That's another course, right? So, I mean, that's 8 months worth of just lessons, and a lot of them still beginning versions of things. So, but the pivot for the system, I like even the term you use, pivot, because pivot, basically, pivot, move, or what we might even call repent. Repent, turn your back on it. And that's the difficult part, is a lot of people are so engaged in the system that you can't turn your back in it. Your hopes, your dreams, your relationships, your marriages, your sexual activities, your sports teams, everything is so embedded in the system that it's hard for you to let go. That's going to be the first move. For real. Everything that you want is so embedded in the system. It's going to be difficult for you because you're so in. You all in. You got your chips all in. You done pushed your chips all in on the table. You said, what would come after authenticating your birth certificate? I don't believe in authenticating your birth certificate. Other people teach that. I get what they're trying to do, but we just show you how to fill out a DS-11 form, get your passport done correctly. And once you have that, everything's updated in the system across the board. You don't have to then go through a lot of stuff like that that's wonky, that I feel to be wonky. If you because watch this, your birth certificate. Let me just put it like this, right? And this is for educational purposes only. And I'm not proclaiming to be a guru of this stuff. I just, I'm somebody who educated and know and lived this stuff enough that I can share a few things with you. Let me say this. What is your birth certificate? Let's just start here. What does your birth certificate represent? Who gave you your birth certificate in the first place? What does it represent? Not coming at you, by the way, just trying to answer your question, right? What does your birth certificate represent? And this is why we got to be careful when we talk about sovereignty. You need to have people that are studying law, that aren't just repeating something they heard somebody else say, or is not giving you something that doesn't make sense. What does it mean to authenticate a birth certificate? Why was the birth certificate given to you in the first place? We got to ask. Why was the birth certificate given to you in the first place? What is the purpose of the birth certificate? Because before you want it to be authenticated, before you want to say, I want it to be authentic, you got to ask yourself, what is its purpose? Okay, so stop, bond, all that stuff, right? The birth certificate, in essence, is what we might call, this is not a legal or even lawful term. It's just something we use to help you to connect. It's something we call an adapter. It's a bridge, right? You as a natural being, you as a natural being, the animals, right? The animals, insects, right? There's not a dog, there's not a cat, there's not a lion, there's not a wolf, there's not a sheep, there's not a goat. There's not any of these things that when they're born, their first response is, I need to check in with somebody to exist. They just exist in nature. They have their own version of civilization and they're cool to exist. I mean, right? They're okay with existing in the way they're created. They don't need any of that, right? Human beings have become the only creatures to believe that when they're born, they need to check in with somebody to exist, right? I said this last night. Can you imagine if you were born somewhere in a cabin somewhere, right? You were born somewhere in a cabin and your family was straight. you were married, you had children, you were able to fish, you were able to go hundreds of square miles to be able to travel and do all the stuff that you wanted, and you never once checked in. You never once had to go to a hospital. You never once had to make sure that somebody paid you this amount of money or this, and you never once had a job. You just lived off the environment, or in a hut, whatever, in a tent. Heck, you lived under the stars. I don't know, right? Would your life be worse or better or whatever? Would you care that you never checked in? Would you care that you never went to a school? Would you care that you never learned somebody else's language so that they would hire you? You wouldn't care about those things, right? But for some reason, we've been taught the opposite, that if I don't go to them and check in, if I don't make sure that I'm recognized by what you say, if I don't make sure that I get a job from you, if I don't make sure I live in what you declare is a great house. Because some of y'all, before somebody told you what a mansion was as a child, as a child, I was running around with roaches and rats sometimes. You couldn't have told me that I wasn't in a great house, though, because I had love. I had a mother, I had a father, my grandmama was there. I mean, we had love. You couldn't have told me until somebody introduced to me, you're not living better. I had no clue. Until somebody taught me that. Until somebody came to me one day and was like, man, look at your shoes. Until that day, I had no clue that there were better shoes. I was okay with shoes that were smudged. I was okay with shoes sometimes that even I'd be walking and they be flapping on the bottom. I still play ball on them, and I still cross you up. I still dunk on you, yam it on you, and all that stuff. It wasn't until somebody told me, oh, yeah, this is what better is. But it was according to their culture. But in their culture, they were trying to enslave me. They were trying to entrap me. It wasn't until I went to school that I started learning about cursing. I learned about cursing from other children. There were little girls that were abused, and I didn't realize it then, but had abusive behavior where they were trying to get us to kiss and do all types of stuff, and we was in preschool. I'm in first grade, and some girl who's basically junior high or freshman in high school, something like that, trying to see if we can do something or whatever, and had to be some people to come and basically beat her down so that she wouldn't mess with me again. And I didn't know any better, right? I was introduced to that by being put in their system. Their system is what starts turning you out. Their system is the Balaam Doctrine. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Once you realize what a straw man is, everything pretty much goes into the straw man category. Is it a natural person? Is it a natural belief system? Is it natural law? Is it natural occurrence? Is it naturally how your body works? Or is it artificial? That's what everything's about. Straw man or artificial. Everything is about that. Don't let nobody fool you. Everything that we're talking about is going to be about straw man or is it artificial? Right? If it's right, if the Most High didn't create it, you can't patent it because it's not natural. That's law. I'm not talking about I'm talking about go look at a patent. See if you can find something that's out there in the ground that the Most High created that's natural. See if you can take a dandelion and patent it and call it, this is a dandelion I found in my house, so I'm gonna sell it from my house and I'm gonna patent it as Kofi's dandelions. No, you can't patent it because you didn't create it. But if I take it and I modify it, and I tell you to spray the dandelion down, right? I tell you to spray for weeds, and you get cancer off of the spray that you use, and then I'll give you a piece of an artificial version of a dandelion that I've only, I basically strained out and focused on only one part of the compound, and I've made myself a formula, and I can give that to you to heal you from what I caused in the first place, and I can patent that and make money off that. I can't make money off of the one, or at least you can make money. You can sell it, but you can't say you own it. So growing up in the Robert Taylor housing project in Chicago, had the best childhood. Yeah, it wasn't until somebody told me that, like, what poverty was. Like, I didn't know I was poor. I had a grandmother, especially my Jamaican grandmother. Well, even my for real, even my grandmother that was native, even though she didn't really talk about it that much. Like it wasn't no thing to see them go outside and pick something outside and play in the grass and eat stuff off the ground. Like I stopped doing that and forgot all about who I was because I got dismembered. I got so much into school. But see, you never used to think like that. Somebody separated you from yourself. Now you believe that you have to be born in somebody's hospital in order to be born. Why? People look down on people who bear children and or bear a child inside of their own home. Why? Why? Why do we get upset at that? Why do you think it's better to be in the hospital? Hospitals are some of the dirtiest places. Oh, I know some people. Look, there's some nurses that are on here, right? I think there's a doctor on here too. Don't get mad at your boy. I'm not saying that y'all are disgusting, but hear me well. I ain't never trying to lay down on the hospital floor. Now, somebody would say, well, you shouldn't lay down I'll lay down on my floor right now. I promise you, I'm not trying to lay down on the hospital floor. And y'all ain't gonna sit here and tell me that you ain't never walked through no hospital and heard every once in a while, no matter how much they clean. But that's where your baby's supposed to be born. That's what they told you. I'll take my chances making sure that I buy a little indoor pool or something and setting it up and letting my wife be able to be correct in the pool and be in the correct position and not on her back. See, everything is artificial. Why does a woman give bear children on her back when she was always supposed to do so in a birthing stool? That's artificial. So you got to start talking to yourself. Why is it that now there are many women don't even think about natural birth? They think about C-section. You said sure, nasty attitudes as well sometimes. Yeah. You said it's logical that hospitals are full of diseases and people practicing to resolve symptoms, not cures. Right. How you doing, Sister Elion? You see what I'm saying? So this is a natural. If I'm going to do something naturally, when did it turn from it was natural to leave your family to have a baby, then to have a baby with your family? When did it stop being natural to have a woman holding your hand through the process? When did that become natural? It's never been natural. You're more at peace with the artificial because you're more at peace with having a piece of you. Remember we talked about that in this series, right? A lot of people are okay. The devil doesn't offer you. See, people do this weird thing where the devil offers you something that has nothing to do with you. No. The devil's going to offer you something that you identify with. He's just going to give you a fraction of it. A lot of y'all do that all the time. You can't wait to get the next job because the job will give you a piece of what it is that you deserve. And you don't think about it that way. But look at your check. You don't like the term garnished wages, but the government always garnishes wages. And you only get paid a fraction. You can make a company, you can be responsible personally for making a company millions of dollars and then hope that they'll give you $100,000 a year for it. But you don't like the term garnishing wages. You know, like they got us in a system where we don't think twice. We just go, yeah, let me sign on the dotted line. And they don't even think about the dotted line and not even a line sometimes. Right? Or the full line. Sometimes we don't even look to see, does it say MP? Is it microprint? Do I need to pull up a magnifying glass? Do I need to zoom in on what these people are trying to get me to sign in on? You said whenever I wanted my family in the room and couldn't have that, it was lonely. Yeah. You don't think about that. Now I'm not saying you should have a room full of 15, 20 people. I don't think that that's smart in a hospital or even at your house, especially depending on how the 15, 20 people are doing. But think about even this. We think that unless the government says to us that we can have unless the government even says to us, not in the government, let's do it like this, the hospital. They tell our sisters not to eat. when they're having the baby, correct? They have you fast until you have the baby. Now I need you, let's just have an honest conversation. Do you think that having a baby inside of you and the baby not eating is something that's healthy for your baby? Let's stop making it mystical. Let's make it practical. And yes, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you know anything. I'm not here saying this is for educational purposes only. You hear what I'm saying? What do you think that making a baby fast? Because that's what you're doing. It's not just the mother who's fasting, who's going through some stuff. The baby is fasting. Okay. Do you think it's smart, especially if it's a first-time mother, and usually, not always, but usually first-time mothers, your dilation takes longer, right? And in the birthing process, or the actual pushing, if you will, takes longer. So we have a baby that's not eating for however long, because some mothers have been in labor for 2 days, first time. What does that do to your baby? Right? Then number two, here's something they don't tell you, because also you're on your back instead of being on a birthing stool, right? But your baby, whether you like this or not, your baby's actually supposed to have fecal matter touch them. This is what activates your baby's uh, um, healing system. I'm sorry, y'all. White blood cells. Why am I saying everything except the word? Not your endocrine system, not your digestive system, immune system. This is what activates your baby's immune system. Okay, sorry about that. This is what activates it. Is the baby gets hit with fecal matter and with urine even for the first time, and when that happens, the baby's body freaks out and it's like, we got to turn on. Immune and digestive system. Okay, thanks, babe. I appreciate it. Your body freaks out and says, we got to turn on. Right? But also, if your baby hasn't ate and the immune system's not really turning on, and then you feed the baby milk, or even if it's just colostrum for the first time. I mean, we setting up ourselves for failure. It says C-section ruins baby's chance of having a great microbiome. Yeah. So even some of that stuff, and even gut health and stuff like that, can be messed up when you take the baby out the gut as well. See, so the woman needs to actually be having something that she can push out with her baby. That's the way it's designed. And we look at it as being disgusting. This and that. Stop letting people, these same people who don't believe in using wash rags, washcloths, and cleaning their legs and feet. Don't let them be the same people to tell you what's clean or not when it concerns your baby. Because I'm not saying let the poop land on your baby, just stay sitting there. I'm saying the poop is supposed to be something that activates your baby's immune system. You said, oh, sugar water. I'm just saying you're not supposed to. One of the reasons why it's so painful. I'm not saying it won't be painful, sisters. And by the way, I'm not a sister, so I'm not going to act like I know what's necessary for the pain tolerance and all that. But one of the reasons why it's painful is because you're on your back. Would it not make sense for your spine to not be jacked up in a jacked up position where the weight is on your spine? And the baby's trying to do everything it can to come out. And by the way, this is why you would have some people have the baby in water, because the baby does come out head first. But the baby's trying to drop down. This is also one of the reasons why your baby has a soft skull. So that even if your baby were to fall on a hard surface, the baby gonna be all right. Like your baby's body, your body is designed to have to bear a child in a different manner than anything that's going on nowadays. Right? You know why your baby can be born in the water? Because it's used to being in water. The water breaks, the baby's basically chasing the water. What happened? The water's gone. Let me find out what's going on. And goes right back in. It doesn't breathe until it goes ahead and gets out of the body anyways. You're breathing for the baby anyways. His lungs have not started anyways. So once it goes into the water, it doesn't breathe. Like, you could take a newborn baby. I'm not saying go do this, right? Right. But hear what I'm saying. You can have a newborn baby right now. It was done to me. It's one of my first memories. One of my first memories that I have. And I have like a lack of childhood memories, right, up until a certain age. But one of the first memories I have, and one of the best memories I have actually, is being at the YMCA and going in the water for the first time as a baby. And I remember being excited. I remember looking at the faces of the other babies. I remember the instructor. I don't know the instructor's name. I remember the instructor. I remember my mother's voice. Like, I remember all the stuff. Like, it's a memory I have, because even as a newborn baby, the baby knows, water's there. I've been in water my whole existence. Let me close everything up. It's natural. It's only when we become adults and when all that being afraid kicks in and stuff like that, that then all of a sudden you can't get adults to be able to make sure that they keep their mouth closed. But the baby knows, mouth closed, don't breathe in through the nose, wait it out. It's straight, it's ready. Right? My little cousin, well, not little anymore, she's a grown woman. However, at the time, my little cousin, years after us, she used to hang out with my family a lot, where my aunt would take care of business and stuff. We would watch her. And my father, who made sure we learned how to swim, never learned how to swim himself, but made sure that we learned how to swim very well. I'm thankful for you for that, Pops, because I was able to teach my son how to swim. And, but yeah, he had us at the pool. So we're playing this and that. My little cousin, she's never gone swimming before. So my little cousin has never been in the water like that, never gone, but she's watching us. She's on the steps. We had this thing where you walk in the steps in the 3 feet, and then from there, you can go to the 4 feet, 5 feet, go across the rope, 6, 7, 8 feet, all that stuff, right? So she sees us playing in like 4 or 5 feet, back and forth, this and that, swimming, splashing. So guess what she did? She just jumped in the water off the steps, and she started doing the freestyle. Nobody taught her nothing. She about 2 years old at the time, maybe 3, but probably about 2 years old. I feel like she could have even been younger than that, for real. But I feel like she's about 2 years old at the time. She didn't care about, did she need to learn this and that? It was natural. Natural law told her, hold your breath, kick your legs, kick your arms, and you'll be fine. Right? We've gotten to a place where we've gotten so away from our nature. How you doing, Rissa? Right? This Balaam Doctrine has got it to a place to where we have forgotten so much about ourselves. We have believed the lies against ourselves so much that we don't even think about what's natural anymore. Right? We don't even think about that anymore. I'm sorry, C-section may cause a child that is frequently ill. When the lung, natural birth, or when it's not natural birth, it can cause the lungs to fill up sometimes, for sure. How you doing, Rod? Thanks for being on. So I'm just saying, we carry a lot of different stuff that's not natural. That's not in our nature. That's not in the nature of our human existence. A lot of stuff that's just not correct at all. Anyways, I've been on this a while. I apologize, y'all. Any questions, comments, or concerns still? Praise y'all for that, right? We ended up going through all different types of stuff. I'm thankful for the question, though, because I said that was going to take us down the rabbit hole, right? And there's a lot more we could go with some of that stuff. I still didn't really get deep into L and stuff like that, but I just want to kind of share a couple of things even from class last night to help you guys kind of think through, and see the connection to this stuff. Like, there's no such thing as, these are not accidents. These are not mistakes. These are not coincidences. This is not just so happens that. These, even if you want to say it was a mistake, there's an effect, right? That mistake is a cause. There's a cause, and that cause becomes an effect. And we got to study those things, right? And that's why, once again, even if we feel trapped, first things first, sovereignty is a lifestyle. It starts in the mind, and it gets to a place. I've said this before. I say it again. At some point in my life, right? At some point as a teacher, at some point as a rabbi, at some point as jelly, right? Whatever it is, jelly kriyot. Like, I mean, for you to realize at some point that you will become unemployable. And unemployable also means you cannot be part of a corporation. The reason why you have a driver's license is to say that you are employed by the corporation. You cannot have a driver's license without being employed by a corporation. Did you know that? Right? So at some point, you're going to have to separate from that. You might not be ready for it yet. You might be afraid. Matter of fact, you might be able to keep one, but just never use it again. But you don't have to use a driver's license to travel. A driver is somebody who has to be licensed because a driver works for a company. If you don't work for a company, you're not driving. If you go on vacation, you're not driving, you're traveling. And we don't know the difference. Now, there are some people you need to have a driver's license because I need a trucker to be able to go to school. And I need to know for a fact that a trucker has the ability to drive for a corporation and has been trained. I would love to make sure that the truck driver is in fact somebody who is a driver, right? But when they're on their own time, you're not driving, you're traveling. And you need to know when you need to give somebody your, for example, the police officer says license and registration, they can still run everything without getting your license and registration. Right? Like I'm just trying to introduce you to some things, and some people still thinking I might be crazy. I'm trying to show you, like, there's a lot of stuff that you don't realize. And hey, how you doing, Mr. Tracy? There's a lot of stuff that's on here that people just don't recognize and realize. Anyways, how you doing? Any other questions, comments, concerns? I know we've gone a lot of different ways. Any questions, comments, concerns? This is for educational purposes only. I'm gonna try and get used to keep saying that. This is for educational purposes only. Right? You have to register a vehicle when you're traveling. You don't have to register a vehicle. Once you bought the vehicle, it's yours. The only reason you're registering is because you say you want it to belong to the state. If your vehicle's yours and it's owned, it's already owned. Why would you register it unless you want to get taxed on it? Now, there are some ways to get out of it, which I won't discuss on here, because oftentimes what happens is you give people a little piece of something, they try to do what you say, and they don't even do the piece that you gave them correctly, and then you all of a sudden now you're held accountable. That's why I keep saying it's for educational purposes only, right? I wouldn't suggest getting rid of a driver's license without first making sure your paperwork's correct. But a lot of people will hear me say, "Oh, no driver's license, no problem," and they cut it up and do crazy stuff, and then they want to come to you later and be like, "Why'd you tell me to do that? I got arrested, or I got rid of my license plate and I didn't even get around the corner." Well, because in order to do that, did you make sure that you were your car and you were not in the system still? Because if you're still in the system, if your car is in the system, the car doesn't belong to you for real, for real. It's like your child, right? The only reason when you do that birth certificate and you give them that social security number and all that, you're registering them with the state. That's why if something happens with that child, that's why even if you didn't do anything wrong, isn't there something floating around social media now to where somebody came and basically stole somebody's child because the government didn't really like the fact, the hospital didn't like the fact that the mother decided to have her child at her own house. So the government came looking for that child. Why? Why could they do that? Why are they trying to make sure they're even doing that? Illegally, by the way, unlawfully. But why are they trying to do that? They're trying to do that because they're trying to say, no, that child needs to be registered with us. Now they're gonna get that baby back. It's unfortunate they had to go through what they're going to do. They're gonna get that baby back because it's against the law. And praise God that there's some people out there with great hearts to be able to put their story out there, right? Not everybody is evil. Not everybody who's in news is evil, right? Praise God that there are some people out there who look out for other people, right? But the reason they're doing that is because they don't want a whole bunch of people to get it in their mind. They're tired of this. Like, first of all, you're losing money. You're losing commerce, Uniform Commercial Code, right? You're losing, control over good economics. Remember, according to Willie Lynch, it's good economics to enslave people. Okay, they got the baby back, praise God, right? Right, but I'm just telling you, they're doing that for a reason. It's because they don't want you to think that it's okay, that you don't have to, right? Like, watch this. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Why do you think, watch this, why do you think that you have to obey law or, these worldly laws? There's only one reason. Doctor's egos at the root of the case. Yeah, I don't know all the details. I know enough to know that basically, like, it same old, same old. I've heard of things similar to it before, But why do you think is the only reason you have to follow their laws? Control, okay, but why can they control? Money, okay, we're getting closer. There's only one reason that you have to follow their laws, because there's no laws in the books for a natural person. There's no laws in the book for a human being. That's why, by lawful definition, a human being is considered to be a monster. I'm not making that up. I'm not trying to equate. I'm literally telling you, by law, a human being is considered to be a monster. Is that they want to enslave more people? True that. Watch this. The only reason why there is laws over you is because you cooperate with the system. Right? Of course they want power. Of course there's greed. Of course they want more money. Of course, I'm trying to tell you, why is it that they get to say that there's laws over you? You cooperate with the system. If you never cooperated, why do they need to make sure that all of our children are signed up to the system? I mean, you got to track the children. You got to track the child. I have to even be careful in my usage of children, because children is okay to use. However, if you're in the system, what they changed it to child rented. So even when they talk about children, they're talking about like child rented. We think it's just the plural of child. Like we think that person or people is the plural of person, but a person can be all types of things. People is a nation, but the plural of person is persons. So you have to figure out what kind of person, where do you fit in persons, and see if you might be a natural person or some version of an artificial person. See, they're very crafty with the word usage. It's like a mortgage. Everybody wants a mortgage until you realize that, wait a minute, a mortgage means a mortgage. They gauge your mortality. That's what the word means. You see what I'm saying? This is why even there's truth to it when somebody says, oh, these words are spells. Why? Because you are spelling. Or yes, so I don't know if you're saying Salachia, the stuff on any of these things. Are your responses showing up? I didn't see one for a while. Hold on. I might have missed it, babe. I'm sorry. I didn't see one since the last one we talked about, which was yeah, I don't the last I'm looking. I see you saying shalom. This is Kimberly. This is aliens. I'm trying to see the last thing we talked about was something you brought up. I see I got a lot of comments on here, babe, so I'm sorry. Yeah, and I saw the last one I saw, I think, was the immune and digestive system one. So I apologize, baby, if you've been putting some stuff out there and I'm not seeing it. I see people responding to you though. So I guess others are seeing it. I'm not seeing it for some reason. But yeah, they put you into spells. These words, they are spells. This is why you got to be even careful with words like gospel. What does gospel stand for? They lied to you. They literally moved the letter. And I'm sorry, somebody said something about Salachia. I don't know if that is that the ancient Roman, like the divinity of the sea, the female divinity, deus of the sea or deity of the sea. Other than that, I might be lost. But gospel, what does that mean? God spell. Now, we never had that term until Germanic language got into it. And once again, in Germanic, a god could be anything you want it to be. So anything or anybody you want them to be, they put a spell on you. God spell. Now, the word God, you're absolutely right to say, well, God is good all the time, and all the time God is good, because God and good are the same word. And in your mind, good is talking about positive. But good just means God, and anything can be good. Matter of fact, don't you trade goods? Ooh, we can go deep into that one. Do you not trade goods or gods? Right? Like these spells. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you not trade gods? If you can trade gods, Trading people ain't nothing. See, like you have to be careful. There's stuff that's put in there. We just think this stuff is random. This etymology, this vernacular, this ferocity and voraciousness that we have to ensure that we protect something that's not even ours. Be careful what you protecting. The gospel is nothing more than God's spell. They removed the letter and you forgot. It's just like when somebody said, we were talking about this yesterday for those that were on the SOC meeting, like when we talk about only. Well, instead of only, think onely. That's what it is. Even this right here, right? That's why you need to get you as close to some of this stuff in different languages as to the origin as possible, right? Even when you talk about this, only is onely. So if we're going to do something only, it means there's only one way to do it. Onely. Somebody removed the letter E and you forgot part of the conversation. Somebody took the letter W off the word whole or holy, and you forgot that you got to be one. Holy Bible, onely. Right? We forgot who we are, or just never knew. Now it's time to know. Right? But these are spells. This is the only culture that you have to spell out a word. You don't spell out words anywhere else. Why do you spell out words here? Why do you have to spell out a word? Because everything that you speak, right, you've been taught to put on spell. Matter of fact, you've been taught to be under a spell. And you can't wait to spell. You can't wait to show you that you're a better speller than somebody else. You'll even say, spell it out for me, even when somebody's talking. So you don't even recognize, you think you're only thinking about spelling out a word as far as the characters that should be used to be able to be put in place, right? You're putting characters in place, but now you, instead of putting character in place, keeping character, having character, you now want to erase the characters, right? Erase that Aleph gives birth to A, and Bet gives birth to B, and Gamal gives birth to C, and Dalet gives birth to D. We're going to erase all that. We just want to spell. We want to mess with your mind. You said the alphabet. Well, first of all, in Kemet, we don't have, right, because I'm partially Kemetic, right, like by blood as well. In Kemet, we don't have gods, right? So even in that, we have what? We have netures. See, and even in that, we're having to miss. I know what we're doing. We're trying to use somebody else's approach or somebody else's language or somebody else's prism, but that's still not us. Even if it's us that I don't necessarily do, right? But we don't have gods, right? And we would be dang sure didn't call it the alphabet. You know, so we're still dealing with the Greek at that point. We're still in somebody else's reference point, still causing us to spell or be under someone else's spell. Okay. And I'm not one trying to win with anybody. I'm not trying to be right. I'm trying to be righteous, right? Like, I'm just trying to tell you, right? I'm just trying to tell you, we have this weird place. We have this weird thing where we're trying to operate as if we're not under a spell. Even the language that we're using right now, I have to ensure that I'm careful, because when we get into this stuff, like, or even when somebody uses a language, like a language without culture is nothing, right? Without a nation, without a body of people, a tongue is connected to a people. A people is a nation, right? A person is not a nation. A person is a corporation. The United States is a corporation who then writes something that says, "We the people." Did you catch that? Did you catch that? You might have missed that. The United States is a corporation who writes out something called "We the people." You hear what I'm saying? I need you to catch it. You're coming to the wrong prism. The United States is a corporation, is an artificial person who then writes something called We the People. If the people are a nation and they belong to a corporation, then those people must be slaves. That means you have a nation of slaves who are under a false person, right? See, we got to be careful not to conflate, right, other values out of this Eurocentric value. Catch what I'm saying? People means nation. People is not multiple versions or multiple. People is not full of a person here, a person here, a person here, a person here. Persons are plural of person. People means nation. The people of New York is a nation of New York. The people of Florida is a nation of Florida, right? But if you say the people of the United States, the people of the United States, watch this. Go do some research and try to find where the United States is located. Do you know the United States is located? And somebody say, well, it's on a map. The United States of America, of course, we know where it's located. The United States is actually located in an office somewhere. Did you know that? Were you aware? How you doing, Vanessa? Are you aware that by law, the United States is located in an office in Washington, D.C.? Now, you would say, well, Washington, D.C. is in the United States of America. Kind of, sort of. Why? Because Washington, D.C. was originally a territory. It was bought by George Washington. Virginia and Maryland gave up some of their land, but Virginia would eventually ask for their stuff back. And therefore is not technically a territory anymore. However, it's subject to Congress, so it's not a real territory. It's subject to Congress, right? But Congress has no jurisdiction really outside, right, of the United States. Congress can't go to Mississippi and say, let's have a vote in Mississippi. Congress can only have a vote where? In Washington, D.C. You said that we ignore the fact that we're all brothers and sisters under the MHOE, then nothing else matters. Okay, well, if you're saying that whatever the MHOE is, I guess it's is that the most high over everything type thing? I don't know what MHOE is. That what we're talking about? But despite whatever that is, okay, fine. If we're all sisters and brothers under the same thing, then guess what? Then you need to make sure that you're not part of a system that says that you're not sisters and brothers. So I don't comprehend the point. I guess, I don't know. In trying to say that we shouldn't be divided, it seems like we're dividing each other. But nevertheless, right, truth divides. There's some people that don't like truth. And if they don't like truth, guess what? Not only should they not be your sister or brother, but for real, if somebody doesn't like truth, the Most High, who we would put over everything, the Most High and his son, right, the Messiah, right, would say it like this in Luke chapter 12. Do you think that I came to bring peace amongst men? He said, I came that mother would be against daughter and father would be against son, and mother-in-law against daughter-in-law and father-in-law against son-in-law. Why? Because it's truth over everything. And if you're not with truth, then it's not about the Most High. That just is what it is. So at some point, we have to realize that truth separates. I'm sorry, you said, do I have to apply for dual citizenship if we move to another country? You corrected your status. It depends, really. I mean, if you are already a non-citizen national, a lot of Eurocentric countries, and when I say Eurocentric, I mean all over the planet, because a lot of countries still hold Western laws standard. So a lot of places, if you're a non-citizen national here, you'll be a non-citizen national there. However, there's certain places, like for example, if you would go to where, if you go to my people, and you would go over to the nation that they're in now, Ghana, and if you were to go over there and look them up, matter of fact, before you leave, if you said you just want to go over there, they've been telling anybody that's part of the diaspora, if you want to come back home, go on, and they'll give you citizenship off the rip. just because, they'll just automatically give you citizenship. So it depends on where you're going. But even being a non-citizen national, usually, anything, most of these Eurocentric nations, they recognize being a non-citizen national in some way, shape, or form. But what was I trying to get to? Anyways, yeah. So Washington D.C. So Washington D.C. used to be a territory. It's not a territory, and Congress has no power outside of Washington D.C. Washington D.C. Has no power because it's subject to Congress. So we right there, we already know. And now look up law 28 USC. This is United States Code 28 USC 300215A. It tells you that the United States is a corporation. So if the corporation writes out something that says "We the people," then who are the people? You can only be a people if you're part of a country or a nation. The United States is not a nation. The United States of America are 50 nations that have come together. The United States is a corporation. The United States of America are 50 states or 50 groups or 50 people or 50 nations that have come together, which is why these different nations, these different states do not always do what the Supreme Court tells them to do, because they have a right as a nation to say, even though the federal government is going to be our baseline and we support you guys and we're not going to go too far from it and we're going to stay in these treaties that we've signed, we're not going to allow our people per se to have to go under that, because even though our people are slaves to you to a certain degree, right, there are some things that we just ain't going to have. Usually it's because they won't get voted in again, right? Usually that's the reason why. But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going in there, but we don't know what these things mean. Let's see. Why are melanated people of America so comfortable here? Foreigners will pack up and leave home. Well, first of all, for a lot of melanated people, this is home. And even if you're talking about people of Africa, or if you're talking about people of South America, people of the Caribbean, um, a lot of them traveled here before Christopher Columbus, before what's Eric the Red's father's name? Leaf, right? Before Leif Erikson got here and all that stuff. Or no, Eric the Red's son, excuse me, Leif Erikson, before he came over and all that stuff, right? There's a lot of us that were here, number one. But when you even say foreigners will pack up and leave, a lot of foreigners there, some of them do, some of them stay right here. And a lot of them come with a plan that we don't have. One of the things that we need to do, first of all, is stop worrying about, because here's one of the things too, as much as we talk about this, a lot of us, when you go back to Africa, you'll find it cool in a lot of ways, because at least you won't be the minority. But there's a lot of stuff that we're still doing with Eurocentricity over there as well. So, for example, we know what Leopold II did to the Congo, but there's a lot of people in the Congo that will be like, Leopold is our daddy, he's our uncle. Like Leopold was hanging y'all from like you were clothing. Like there were so many people that were hanging, so many slaves that would be hanging. They said it would almost look in an eerie way. They related it to looking out and seeing, like clothes dry in the sun. Right. So there's a lot of stuff that you'll discover that's still really messed up. Like we still don't work together. We should have had our own currency well before people like Gaddafi had to die and stuff like that. We should stop killing our own and letting people get away with it, like what happened with Sankara. And we had somebody who was, the person who killed him, his right-hand man. We allowed him to be in office for 40 years, even though the CIA and the United Nations doesn't work together to get rid of him. So there's a lot of stuff that happens in a lot of places. What we had to start doing across the diaspora is coming to a place to where we are, like, watch this. Remember, in law, it doesn't matter where you're from; it matters who you're from, right? And that's one of the things that we have messed up in our mind, right? It doesn't matter where you're from; it matters who you're from, right? No matter where you go, if we don't get this right, it's still going to be the same thing. No matter where you scatter to across the earth, if you don't get this right, it's still going to be messed up. If it doesn't matter who you marry, if you don't get this right, there's people who've gone ahead and say, and I'm not here to speak ill of anybody's relationships. I'm just here to say as it is, right? Like there's people who have married into other races, right? I know that's not a term that we necessarily use, but it is what it is. There are people who have married into other people's races, and they did it to escape the negative race and things like that you came from. And guess what? You still dealt with the same issues, sometimes even more so, because now it's disturbed by the fact that y'all didn't even think about in the culture that you're in, what cultures you both bring in on top of that, and then what does this child identify, blah, blah, this and that, or whatever, and how does society look at it, and not realizing that you're in a culture built off of a one drop rule, which means if you got one drop of black blood, you black in this system, whether you like it or not. And this is why everybody, including black folk, everybody tries to hide as many drops as possible. Because at the end of the day, everybody, the older we get, and I know some people don't like the term black, right? But you get what I mean. The older, the further back in the story of mankind we go, the blacker, the darker, whatever you want to use description, the more melanin, etc., all of us get. At one point, everybody on here was extremely melanated on the inside and the out, because melanin, by the way, scientifically speaking, at least, or at least some versions of science, and medically speaking, melanin is never measured from the outside in; it's always measured from the inside out. Now, normally, if somebody's dark on the inside, they'll have more melanin. Or dark on the outside, they'll actually have more melanin on the inside to make them darker on the outside, but it's not always the case, right? So I just want to put that out there, right? However, we got to be honest about it. How you doing, Sleepy? Thanks for being on. We got to be honest about it. The further back anybody's family tree goes, the darker y'all all get. At some point, I don't care who you are, where you are in the world, where you're located. At some point, you come from somebody darker than you until you get back to the beginning. You say, Allah is God, the hidden one, the symbol of object reality. If that's your truth, then you live that truth. Allah is not the hidden one for me, right? But if that's your truth, live your truth. You know, so like, so these are the things that you have to be ready for. You have to be real for, right? I feel like I live, So yeah, Raz is a netter, or what he would describe as a netter, and I'd say that might be. I feel like it's a dialect issue, but I'll go with that for today. I'm not here to argue, per se. Said you embrace your blackness. Hey, I mean, you do. What I'm saying is, before you embrace blackness, just make sure you embrace culture, and I don't mind it, right? And some people will argue, don't call it black, don't call it this, call it dark skin, call it hue, call it blah blah, call it more, okay, whichever, right? Don't call it black because black people are really white. That's the new one now. Is go by when somebody was trying to mess that up, and white people were trying to take white people, which white, by the way, is not even the color. So I don't know why you want to be a white person when white was never a color in the first place. White actually means the absence of color, right? It means to see through. It means to be clear. It means to be bright. It doesn't mean color, right? I hear you, Sister Shima. I'm gonna let that sit there. I'm gonna let that sit there. I'm gonna let it sit there. I could go on there, but we're not gonna do it, right? But these are the things that, like, we have the arguments and things like that. They're coming from different cultural perspective, but Aman, Malak, right? Right? He is the King of Kings. Amen. But he is the King of Kings, no buts. Right? I forget where I was now. I'm sorry. Where were we at? Where were we at? You're Yoruba? Okay. Hey, cousin, how you doing? I'm Shwi. Maybe you know me as Ashanti or Ashanti Shwi. Right across the border. You said all people have melanin? Yeah, melanin, you can't be alive without melanin. If you're a plant, you can't live without chlorophyll. If you're a person, you can't live without melanin. So just because somebody's lighter than you or has less pigmentation, there's no such thing as a white person, once again. If they were truly white, they'd be translucent. Now, the less melanin you have, there'll be some things and some issues you have. Also, depending on where you are, like in the cold and stuff, there'll probably be some things that aren't as much of an issue for you. So, there can be many different reasons why someone who's not melanated is in a particular place or this and that or whatever. But I forget, we were going somewhere. And I forgot where we were headed. I apologize. But anyways, if anybody had any questions, comments, or concerns, that's something I ain't doing. You said your people are both indigenous to Americans and from Africa. It's all our home. Yeah, and once again, like we said earlier, remember that's what we started off earlier. Remember, we said that a lot earlier in the beginning. Hey, don't get caught up in the 7 continents thing, because even with 7 continents, all of you are still connected as one. So the person who stands on the ground in Kemet, the person who stands on the ground as Yoruba, as Shwi, as Ashanti, as Igbo, right? As Mali, as Timbuktu, as Zulu, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As Bantu, whatever, right? You stand on the same ground that's connected to the same, right? You stand on the ground that's connected to the same ground that I stand on as Wampanoag, as Haudenosaunee, as Seminole, as Creek, as Blackfoot, as Navajo, right? As Khalifa. We stand on the same ground. At some point, we got to stand on the same ground, right? But we have to get away from stuff that is causing us to think that we don't stand on the same ground. You said you practice Kemet, the world's oldest recorded religion. Kemet is the whole land of Africa, until we have to be honest about the fact that before there was Kemet, there was Kush. There were Cushitic dynasties, and there were Cushitic netters, as you would say, right? And before the Kemetic people came, and then from their own brothers, right? Because Cush and Kemet are brothers, right? In a sense, right? Their brother, sister were brothers, depending on your belief system. And then they took the Cushitic stuff and took even the Cushitic dynasties and defeated them, and then crossed out their stuff and started to rename some of the things, correct? But we can say before Cush, there was somebody that Cush did it too as well. So we have to be careful on all that, right? We're just doing this thing where we're trying to say what I want to be, and I'm going to go ahead and identify, and I get it, because people have taken our identity so much that we just go, Kemet is the way, but that's what we get from a very Greek and Greco-Roman mindset, and even Arabic mindset, to where all these people wanted to identify with Kemet, and even they got mad when they realized that Kemet didn't look like them, right? They turned it into Egypt. But Kemet is not, even before Kemet existed, there were other people who had worship. And even when Kemet was writing, there were other people who wrote. Like, Kemetic people have written that. Right? There were other people they traded with. There were other people they bartered with. And Kush existed before Kemet, right? Right upstream, what they would call south, right upstream for us, we would call it up, because for us in Kemet, we would say it's the opposite way, right? The opposite flow. So I'm just saying, we're doing this thing where it's like, we're trying our best to separate and be like, this is why I'm correct. And it's like, well, that might not necessarily be correct. You said exactly the Nubian or the original Egypt. No, well, what are we doing there? We know that Kemetic dynasties, because first of all, Nubia, right, is what they would call it later on, right? When we talk about Kush, the Cushitic people were first, and they were down, or what we would call upstream for us, but what they now call down south, they were down further. No, Kemet is not Ham. Kemet is Kemet. Kemet is Mizraim, or Kemet is just Kemet, is Egypt. So if you're going by the biblical principle, Ham's sons are first, the firstborn is Cush, secondborn is Kemet, thirdborn is Put, fourthborn is Canaan. Those are Ham's sons, his 4 sons. Right. Right. So, but so even with that, so in Yashtael, or even in ancient Kemet, for real, but we would call it Mizraim, or what people now try to call Mizraim. But it's a different context. So to say that it's the oldest is not necessarily correct, because it has something that superseded it. Doesn't mean that it's any less powerful, doesn't mean that it's any less influential. And even with Kemet doing that, guess what? Guess what happens even still? Then the Cushitic dynasties, when Kemet started getting attacked and basically was about to lose, Cush came back, not just to conquer Kemet, but also to try and protect Kemet their brother, because Kemet never really fully took over Kush anyways. But they came up there to protect their brother. When here comes all the hordes from all these other countries, they tried their best to hold them back. And eventually it was actually, it looked really bad on the last Cushitic king and the last person to be over any kind of Cushitic / Kemetic alliance or country, or at least Kemetic country, because Kush would actually keep its place away, even going fighting people in World War II, right? Like even, Ethiopia considered to be Kush, right? Or Nubia. And Nubia technically, Kush technically goes into what they call the Middle East and stuff as well, right? So it's a lot more vast a territory than what we give it credit for to this day. We only talk about all of Africa as if, once again, all of Africa, which is huge, right? Africa, out of how many countries are there? I don't even know. 200 and some countries. Africa has 50 something of them or something like that. They always change it or whatever, but Africa is like 2.5 times bigger than what it shows up on maps and things like that. So Africa is vast. And even Africa, once again, Africa was not considered to be a continent, because Africa, Asia, and Europe were all one continent. So when you talk about Africa, you got to talk about Europe. We were all over the continent, and we were already coming over to Omek, things of that nature. So we're having a conversation about it that goes well past what our normal conversation is. So if you talk about Africa, especially if you're talking about from Pangea, then Africa is one with everybody. Everybody's one with Africa. We know this already, right? If we're going to talk about Africa after the split of the earth, whether you want to talk about it being billions of years ago, millions of years ago, if you want to talk about it being about 5,000 and something years ago, whichever one you want to go by, you still have to recognize that they were still traveling everywhere. Matter of fact, if you're Polynesian, you got to deal with being Melanesian, right? So you still got to deal with being the same people. And if you know about that, then you got to know about, I was just talking about this one, Tanganyika. Tanganyika is where you get Tanzania from. And people who are Polynesian chieftains I've sat down and talked to and had discussions with, they'll tell you straight up, yeah, like Tanganyika, that's where we come from. But that's Tanzania. And some of them even admit that before they left the continent, they went up through Kemet, which means that Kemet, who had great ships and stuff, you can see how that might affect some of the things that were able to help people to travel all around the world. So we're having a conversation that usually lacks a lot of culture. Right? So our whole thing is just like, we got to make it fit into, this is what I want, versus like, no, like, we can all be one. We should all be one. That the problem is that we are participating. Remember, I was even talking about with the checks that you sign, the contracts that you and all that. It's only what you decide to participate in. And if you decide to participate in something that culturally says that I have to be better than you just because, and I'm not even going to verify to see if there's anything outside of you, it just is what I say it is, and that's it. Well, you're the same as the person who's the slave master. You said we can't both be right, and we don't have to have the same cultural beliefs. Yeah, that's true. You see, and so I try to find, and I think people don't see this. I try to find the places we can agree as much as possible, right? Even the Bible declares, agree with your adversary quickly. So I try my best to agree with my adversary, even if you shouldn't be. If we're following the same way, then we should agree with each other quickly, because we got the same, enemy at the end of the day, right? Like, we have the same enemy, if that's what you're calling them. If that's your enemy, and we're brothers, or we're brothers and sisters, we family, we whatever you want to call us, then at some point we got to stop fighting each other. And that's the biggest answer to the biggest question that's there. How do people keep defeating people? Because when people came looking for you, they were so busy telling you that because you came from a different tribe, you should be allowed to enslave somebody else. And we still try to do it to this day. You come from a different tribe, so the way that I think is better than yours. Bow down to it, enslave it, and then I'll sell away your knowledge to somebody else and let them go ahead and do with your knowledge whatever they care. Because I don't even care to protect your knowledge. I just want to make sure that you bow down to mine. We're doing the same thing. And I'm not pointing out any particular person. I'm saying this is what we do as a society today. This is why you got all these people calling themselves Israelites, but Israelites seem to hate each other more so than any churches out there nowadays. Because the same thing that we said we were escaping, we do it to each other now. Forgive my language, right? Well, I won't use it because we got babies that be watching. But used to be somebody else that would call you the N-word. Now Israelites stand on the corner and call each other the N-word. Used to be somebody else that said that you was an animal and you was a mare or you was a bee, right? Now there's somebody else is your own who call their own sisters bees. Right? It used to be that we could say, oh man, be careful about them. But now I can't say it's just the white man. Because if I were to be honest with you, white men got more sense, even if they believe it. A lot of them at least try to say it behind closed doors. You stand on the street corner and say it. Now, one of the places we got invited to, we might be able to go. We'll see how everything goes. I'm supposed to get a call about it sometime soon. But we might be invited to go speak somewhere. And there are other people that believe what we believe in that area. But they want us to come and want to bless us with a place to stay and some stuff like that, and allow my wife to teach some things. And the reason is because these are people who have many different religions over there, but they're all us, right? And they're all of this diaspora. And they want to have everybody represent themselves, and they want to have everybody come and speak something. They'd like for me to be, maybe even possibly, I think it might be something like a keynote speaking thing, but it might not. But I've been invited, and I asked, or I was going to ask, but they informed me before I could even ask. I was like, why would you ask me? To come, and y'all already got people who are, called Hebrew Israelites down there. And they were like, well, they be out here fussing and cussing. And there's one in our town, we got this in our whole city, we got like this one grocery store that's ours and it's Black owned, right? So everybody goes there to support, and they'll pull up right outside of that Black owned store and start calling all of our people B's and H's and N words and this and that. And all I can do is just kind of hang my head in shame. Because I can't even deny that we do that. That's what we do. We do it better than they do now. We argue against each other better than they argue against us. But that's what Willie Lynch told you was going to happen. Thank you for the love. Appreciate that. Willie Lynch told you that's what the game was. He said, all we got to do is teach it to the first generation. And if we can teach it well to the first group, right? The first group that we capture, they'll teach it to their children, and they'll teach it to each other. And even if we won't even have to do it anymore, they'll do it for us, right? We'll just watch them do it. And he said, bare minimum, they'll do it for 300 years. He said, maybe they'll do it for thousands. We don't even have to do anything. He said, the only anomaly that will stop this thing from moving, he said, we have to get back to our culture. And he said that men would go back to being husbands and women will go back to being wives. We get our culture back, we get our marriages back, it's on. But we're so busy splitting, right? You got Stockholm syndrome. When you have Stockholm syndrome so much, you'll fight to put the blades out faster than the master will himself, right? Did not Minister Malcolm Shabazz teach us that? Malcolm X? They did not teach us that. There were two kinds of slaves. I'm just quoting now. This is for educational purposes only. Right? There's two kinds of slaves. That's what he said, right? And then really, that's all you got to see. There's only really two kinds of Negro, so to speak, that we dealing with. There were two kinds of slaves. There was the house Negro and the field Negro. He said the house Negro lived in the house of massa. He dressed pretty good. What massa left down for him. He ate pretty good. Well, what massa left. He did all the things that massa required him, and he loved his massa. I said he loved his massa better than the massa loved himself. If the master said, we got a nice house here, he said, yeah, boss, we got a nice house here. He identified with his master. He loved his master. He said, if the master said, or the master got sick, he said, what the matter, boss? We sick? We sick. If the master house caught on fire, he'd fight harder to put the the master's the blaze off the he fight harder to put the blaze out than the master would himself. And he loved this master. I say again, he loved his master better than the master loved himself. But then there was a field Negro, right? The field Negro, they lived out in the field, away from the house. They caught the sting of the latch. They did all the hard, extreme work, and they hated the master. I said he hated, this is Malcolm X speaking, right? Educational purposes only. I'm quoting. I say he hated the master. When the master got sick, or when the master got sick, he didn't say, "What's the matter, boss? We sick." He prayed that the master died. When the master's house caught on fire, he didn't try to see if he could put a blaze out. He prayed for a wind. He prayed for a breeze. And the difference between the house Negro and the field Negro is if you came up to the house Negro and you said to the house Negro, let's run away. Let's separate. Let's have our own bylaws. Let's have our own land. If you came up to the house Negro and say that, the house Negro would say the same thing that a lot of house Negroes still today say. Well, separate from this good land, from this good master. Separate from master. Why would you separate? Where would you get a better house than this? Where would you get better clothes than this hand-me-down stuff where you can dress like master? Where would you get better food than to eat what master eats, the crumbs that fall from the master's table? Because that's your Messiah. Where would you get a better job opportunity than this? Where would you live in better house than this? They'll tell you, I didn't leave anything in Africa. Why, you lost your mind in Africa. I didn't lose anything when I was native in the tribe. You lost your mind. You know, all these native tribes used to be cannibals. There were some native tribes, indigenous tribes around the world that were cannibals, sure. But let's not act like Europeans didn't eat Europeans. Let's not act like they still don't eat each other. Look up Hollywood. By the way, can I put a pin in that? Do you guys even, we were talking about pagan earlier, right? Or really we were talking about druids and stuff. Do you not know where Hollywood, does anybody even know what Hollywood means? Do you even know where the term Hollywood comes from? It's real easy for people to talk about this stuff, but nobody knows because you don't look for culture. Do you know what Hollywood actually comes from? It's literally Hollywood. It's a type of plant. It's a type of tree, right? And they use it for wands, for magic wands. The Druids used it for magic wands when they created magic spells. And they would put things out there to lead people or guide people as a government, as a beast, if you will. The Druids did that. Guess what? When you want to see what's going on, when you want to see what political party means this or that, when you want to see what's happening, when you want to see what the newest technology is going to be, when you want to see all these people you're supposed to learn about marriage from and see their marriages and all this stuff, if you want to see, guess where you go? You look for Hollywood. You look for the magic wand. Do your research, right? Don't just believe me because I said it. But when you find it to be true, I just need you to comprehend you're living in something that's a lot different than what you think it is. You're not living in the same thing. You're living in something a lot different. In your mind, you're living in something else than what actually exists out there. Those going to Hollywood should not expect anything else other than to be used like a magic wand. Witchcraft. That's all it is. right? And I know we use witchcraft somewhat loosely sometimes. A lot of times what people do is if you don't agree with it spiritually, if you don't agree with the culture of it, you just proclaim it to be witchcraft. No, Hollywood is literally witchcraft. It is a magic wand. Oh, thank you, D. Anderson. Right? It is literally a magic wand. Right? This ain't no you just calling the medicine man a witch. No, no, no. This is straight up. They're telling you this is a magic wand. Do you not know? I don't know if I got all the stuff to be able to pull it up real quick or to tell you. So I'll just do the best on top of my head. But do you not know where they do the Oscars ceremony? You said so that term Magic City in the Black. I don't know why. For real, for Magic City, just in of itself, there's so much wild stuff over there, and people changing in sexuality and stuff like that. I mean, I guess for black folk, at least for Georgia, Atlanta folk, it's definitely. Hold on, is Magic City? Is Magic? Am I thinking of the right place? Is Magic City, Atlanta? I might be thinking of the wrong place. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't catch this, right? A lot of people are not don't catch this stuff. But so the Oscars up until 1999 I think through 1999 in 2000, right? When they had y'all worried about the world was going to end, they did something crucial. But up until 1999, the Oscars was celebrated in the same place over and over again. Do you know what that place was? Oh, okay. You said the Kodak Theater? Okay. So that place was a Masonic lodge. That place was a Masonic lodge. That's where you saw the Oscars every year. Then, then what they did was they built a new place for the Oscars, and they took some of the stuff over that they had at the Masonic Lodge, and they moved it. Now, here's something that unless you've been there or you've done some research, you would never even know. One day, maybe we'll put up a thing and show you guys just nothing but pictures of it, right? But here's something you might not ever have known before. Okay, when you go over there, all you used to seeing is a red carpet, right? That's all y'all are used to seeing is a red carpet. What you may not know, right? And I'm looking for the name of it because I want to make sure y'all can look up some of this stuff. You don't want to. I don't want you to think um, that I'm making this up. I'm looking for the name of the movie, and you can see what it looks like for yourself. Mm, okay, I think this is what I'm looking for. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure this is what I'm looking for. So I think it's called The Fall of Babylon, made in 1999. Now they had a new movie come out called Babylon, but there was an ancient movie called The Fall of Babylon. Right? Probably could find it somewhere to watch for free nowadays. Maybe not, who knows? But an ancient movie called The Fall of Babylon. All right. And in The Fall of Babylon, oh, the Magi of Disney and its name and all that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I just learned about that one. Right. But so it's something called The Fall of Babylon. Anyways, it was like it was the most expensive movie of its time. I mean, that's a long time ago, 1919, but still, so it's over 100 years ago, but it's the most expensive movie of its time. They basically rebuilt the set of the movie. And so every time you go to the Oscars, when you see the red carpet, which is basically supposed to be about blood and stuff like that, that's why red is there and all that. And you see all these people dressed in ties and suits and ties doing all this. And Oscar, by the way, is like a Babylonian Talmudic type of what you would call today God or whatever. Don't let them fool you. They try to be like, oh, it's some old uncle or something, or maybe it's a nephew. No, it's Oscar. Look up Oscar in Babylonian theology, and you'll discover that you're dealing with a spirit. And they rebuilt. You don't see this on. You can kind of see it if you look correctly at certain things, but they rebuilt the whole set, or at least the whole. There's this famous scene where basically, if you've seen the movie, what's that movie, Ben-Hur? And you remember when in Ben-Hur, if you've seen that's a really old movie too. These are some musty references for some of us. But if you've seen the movie Ben-Hur, and you've seen when they ride around in horses and chariots and all that, and you also see there's a part where they're coming in and there's these big, huge walls and everything. They kind of have a scene in the Fall of Babylon, the 1919 movie, that has the same kind of wall, right? And it's very, it kind of looks like that. And they rebuilt it. They rebuilt that in the scene from that famous scene. And they have like all this stuff that talks about like Babylon. It talks about how Babylon's necessary, this and that. And they have little quotes and stuff, right? To make you understand that you are in a version of Babylon. Oh yeah, and you can see giant Oscar statues in the movie, stuff like that. Yeah. And they had giant statues of somebody named Oscar. Right now, Oscar also too, right? Before somebody goes there, you can talk about the comedic nature, who's dealing with that as well, right? So we can talk about that to in a certain extent as well, right? But it's you're dealing with basically the same spirituality, same deity, same spirit, same nature, same mindset, twisted maybe, but still same mindset, right? So they built this, and then when you go inside, it's basically nothing more once again than a Masonic temple. And you don't see certain angles, so you don't know it. But if you know the design, in all Masonic temples, including places like courtrooms, if you look up, you'll see a circle. Sometimes it'll be a skylight, or sometimes it's just a nice light that's in a circle. You'll see it somewhere. You'll see checkerboard floors. Why would you see checkerboard floors? Because that's part of what you do in certain courts when in a Masonic temple, right? You will see on stage or somebody wearing something that looks like, the Columbia, the goddess Columbia, or Isis, where they got that from, or even what we would now call today more so Venus. You'll see somebody dressed like that, somebody do a performance like that, or you'll see somewhere in the background. And sometimes they just put her in the background, the backdrop of all the stuff that's on stage, right? You're going to see those things. Right, when I start telling you these things, and you start looking, if you even watch the Oscars, but if you decide to even look at some of the Oscars to see what I'm saying, like you won't be able to unsee it. Right, it's going to be a red carpet going in. It's going to be gold somewhere. Right, you got to have gold because Babylon is very much so the gold. You're also going to see a lion with wings, just like you see in Daniel chapter 7. You're going to see a lion with wings. You are. You're going to see a lion with wings. Why? Because in Babylon, a lion with wings was everywhere. Right? Even though I kind of let it go, but a lot of our stuff, a lot of people like to put lions with wings, right? And for some reason, we think Sphinx, even though the Sphinx would be the head of a man on the lion. I don't know why we do that, but that's Babylonian, Mesopotamian. Which is why, by the way, if you look at Abraham's father was into a lot of mess because he was dealing with a lot of Mesopotamian stuff and a lot of stuff because we don't know how long these people live and we don't look at how these names go together. A lot of that stuff is dealing with Nimrod. Do some research and discover that Nimrod and Abraham's daddy had conversation, and Abraham's daddy wanted to lock up his own son because his son Abraham broke the idols. You said you stopped watching years ago because of stuff like that. Yeah. So this is why it's not. We talked about it. We even did a whole live session on it, right? But this is why it's not a big deal for me. I won't say it's not a big deal, but this is why it's not totally confounding or messes with me to the point of I'm going to give up or I'm done or I'm not going to deal with this stuff anymore. I don't freak out when I see somebody dressed like a devil, um, sliding down a pole, breaking the devil's neck after they done lap dancing, as a guy on a guy, and then you know, and then becoming the devil themselves at the end, because that's Babylon. That's Hollywood. That's a magic spell. Matter of fact, I can't. Well, I won't say I can't fault the young man, even though I don't know if he even wants to identify as that anymore. I can't fault Lil Nas X for that, because for real, he probably doesn't even know how to not be open to that spirit. He doesn't even realize, like, you're not in the same thing. He went from being like nobody. I won't say nobody cared about him, but how many people really knew who Lil Nas X was until all of a sudden he did something that was completely out of his culture? I'm gonna take my horse to the old town road. I'm gonna ride till I can't no more. He wasn't doing none of that stuff before that. He wasn't doing none of that stuff before that. He got around some certain things. He wanted to be Hollywood, no problem. We got that. We literally, and pause for some of y'all got nasty minds. But he got what 50 talked about. 50 told y'all, y'all. 50 was being perverted about it, right? But for real, he called it something different. In the gang mentality and 50's mentality, they called it something different. But 50 uses the same wand, if we want to be real about it. I ain't trying to say 50 is gay, but I'm trying to tell you 50 knows about the spells. He told you he got the magic stick. He got Hollywood. That's what it is. You said that's what you just said to the Jews. Not everyone is Abraham's children, but those that obey Father's will. And we can't say shalom to everyone. Not everybody means for our peace or well-being. Okay. Hmm. Right? Like Hollywood is a magical thing that's used to wave around and cause spells to be in your life. It's supposed to be like you're supposed to see children get messed up in Hollywood. Don't if you want your child to live a life and be spiritually well, you can't have them be in Hollywood. You're not going to get that. You can't. Right? It's like telling somebody to play for the NFL and expecting them to never be injured. That's not going to happen. Now maybe they'll be able to walk when they get out, but maybe they'll have a limp for the rest of their life. You said your mom died in those hills. Hey, right? And I don't mean to be dismissive. Sorry, I'm sorry to hear about your loss. I'm just but thank you for being willing to put it out there because it's real. People don't think about this stuff. You said, is Israelite a person who walks upright, and do is a person who speaks truth? An Israelite is somebody who would either be from a certain tribe of people that would make you an Israelite, or well, to be Yashar, to be in Israel would mean that you're a certain group of people. But to be Israelite, you can be grafted in, people of all colors and stuff like that. So if you'll follow the commandments, if you live in the ways, then you can become an Israelite. That's something that Solomon said when he built the temple. Look at Solomon's prayer. He said, even if a stranger would do these things, that means somebody who's not Israel. We ask that you protect them as well, because it was always known. But if you're not going to do what you're supposed to do, Israel or not, because even not all Israel is Israel. And there's even Israelites that were out in the wilderness that ended up getting ate up by snakes and stuff. You still got to be righteous, right? That's why I'll be the first person to tell you, not all skin folk is kinfolk. You can be 100% Israel in your blood and 0% Israel in your way. As a person who's an Israelite who doesn't follow any of the ways of the Most High and actually becomes blood guilty because they cause more people to go to hell than to be able to get into heaven, or they're a stumbling block at least, because nobody has a heaven or hell to put anybody in except the Most High. But they become a stumbling block. Isn't it right? Like, isn't it better for them that a millstone be tied around their neck and they be thrown off a bridge than to be a stumbling block even to one of the little ones? So, it's a different context. So is royal light is a person who walks upright, and Jew is a person who speaks truth. Well, there was no letter J. So you keep using the letter J. Now if you're talking about Yahweh Da'ain, you not even have to talk about which kind of Yahweh Da'ain. Or if you're talking about Jew, you're talking about basically not everybody was a Jew. Jew is short, is a way that people say now Yahweh Da'ain or Yahweh Yahweh is Judah. But Judah, even when 9 or 9.5 tribes, so to speak, left, you still had 2.5 tribes left. So even when the Messiah shows up, you only have Judah, Benjamin, and Benjamin, and Levi left. Everybody else has gone to look for the land of Asheroth. So even in that, we're having a weird discussion. So we'd have to be accurate on it, but we're kind of getting off. If you have more questions about it, whatever, or if that even is a question, not sure. But thank you, Ese Panama. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it. All right. You say, is it wrong to be a horror movie fan? I'd say there's something you need to look into if you are one. I'd say there's something you need to look into, right? To want to see it. Now, some people want to be scared out of their mind. Some people want to do that, but to need the gore and stuff. And I'm not saying it's just personally, because I'm gonna be honest. When it comes to horror movies, I'm, for lack of a better word, I know this word is not a great word to use, so forgive me, but I'm a wuss. I'm, I can't, I put myself in people's positions too much to where like, I don't just get scared or anything like that. Like I actually, if I see somebody's neck get slit or something like that, like I feel my neck get slit type thing. So I can't watch it for those reasons. Um, but, uh, but yeah, when you're talking about this stuff, um, I would see if it's something that you really either like or you feel you have to see a lot. There's some spiritual stuff, especially if everything's centered around death and mayhem and stuff. Sometimes, and once again, like I said, I don't. When we were younger, I don't think we knew how to shelter ourselves from some of those things, and so some of us were open up to it. And some of the stuff is done very well, and things like that, as far as very well for that stuff. So you're seeing things that sometimes look realistic. Sometimes some people like watching horror movies because they're funny to them, not because they like death, but because the stuff is so unreal. But I would just say I would look into it. All right, higher heights. You have a great day. I would just look into it to see. I would try my best to get back to the DMs. I'm not great with DMs. I get a whole bunch of DMs, so I will try my best to see if I can find it. If you're still on, if you want to contact us, we do have contact information I can put up real quick for you. If you're looking to contact us about something. Uh oh, I got so many pictures on here again. Yeah, hold on. Give me a second. So if you want to text us or email us, you can do so at these. I'll leave it up for a second. You can text us 202-599-7312. Or you can email us at kofi-ofori.com, kofi-ofori.com. I'm sorry, you can email us at kofi-ofori082 at gmail.com. My first name, my last name, and then at gmail.com. Or I'm sorry, kofi-ofori082 at gmail.com. All right, put it up for a few more seconds. We're going to take a screenshot. And then we'll get ready. We're pretty much getting ready to take our leave anyways. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Great questions, by the way, today. Push me. I like it when y'all are pushing me. Feeling empty today. That's great. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? In the Hills program, they show the different children entering behind the Hollywood sign to a magic run party. Yeah, there's all types of stuff, by the way, like that. Like this stuff is crazy. Like, I don't know if y'all ever heard of twink parties. If you don't know about twink parties, if you don't know what a twink is, basically a twink is, I think, supposed to be like a young boy that looks like a boy, looks like a male, but is very feminine in his appearance. And there's people who have famous, what they call twink parties all over the place. The guy who I think did the first X-Men trilogy, or at least the first one out of the trilogies or whatever. He used to have them all the time, and they'd be these young boys who were looking for opportunities to come to Hollywood, and the guys line up, the little boys lining up, basically these teenage boys, whatever, lining up to be used. We have classes and things like that that we do. We teach things. We can probably do some one-on-one stuff as far as non-citizen national status. Um, I would just, I couldn't teach it on a session like this. First of all, for a couple of reasons. Number one, we get our stuff taken down when we teach some of that stuff, but also some of the stuff, I'm gonna just be honest, like I gotta see where you're at to be able to teach some of the things. And then also in this platform, when you get certain questions, comments, concerns, you really can't teach it, the way that you need to. But yeah, we have classes. We're actually in the midst of our second semester right now. And one of the ones we're doing is Sovereignty One. Sovereignty One is when we actually show you how to get your status changed as far as your paperwork. Um, but yeah, we can always, do that, set up a one-on-one session, something like that. You said, what are my thoughts on a hedge fund? I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not the person to necessarily talk about a hedge fund because I'm not 100% sure how the hedge fund works because I've never really tried to use one. Um, I'm looking at it right now to see if I can get a basic definition. It says here actively manage investment pools whose managers use a wide range of strategies. Yeah, so even in that is kind of, yeah, I'd have to do some research on exactly what a hedge fund is. I know there's different types of hedge funds as well, and different things like that. I think it talks about like accredited investors sometimes, things like that, which can go be a whole thing of like what makes you accredited or this and that. What are the rules? Sometimes hedge funds come off to me looking more like pyramid schemes, but not all of them. But I don't know enough about them. I've never really used one, so I couldn't really. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't really give you anything on that. I'm sorry about that. Great question, though. I don't want to just act like I know something. Oh, thank you, Sister Monica, and thanks. I see you switching over. How you doing, Sheila? By the way, I'm sorry, you got kicked off. Yeah, they still messing with it. How you doing, Brother Elijah? I missed a lot of stuff over here. My bad, Joe. My bad. Seems like alone with them paying you. Yeah, so I don't. Yeah, I don't even know. I have to look it up. In all honesty, if somebody knows a little bit about it, and y'all want to take some of the conversation and steer it in a certain way, you can. I have no clue about it. I've never used one. Not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying I don't know. I don't even know how it works. So, but thank you all again. Looks like we don't have any other questions, comments, or concerns coming in. So thank you all for being on. We're gonna do our shout out a little differently today. We're gonna do our shout out. I know I said I'd wait till yesterday. I'm gonna just do what I'm led. I've been trying to get away from it. So for those that are interested in the shout out, if you're on TikTok with us, feel free to just hang around for a bit, and we'll show you how it works. Other than that, thank you everybody so much for being on. I'm gonna try and get some rest. We have been up all night. When I say we've been up all night, like we have been up all night. I tried to sleep like on the floor here to make sure I can get up. I was able to get about 20, 25 minutes of sleep so I could be with y'all. But thank y'all for your energy, for your effort, for your questions, for pushing us. We appreciate it. We're excited and we're grateful to be with you guys again. Don't forget this week, intermittent fasting starting tomorrow, sun up to sundown. My wife and I will do our best to try and be up for the special session this evening at 8 p.m. Eastern New York time. It'll be on Kofi_42 if you're on TikTok or on YouTube. Do not forget this. Tomorrow is early rise Bible study session, as we do every Monday at 6:30 a.m. Eastern New York time, and tomorrow will be our very own Minister Sharon. So pray for her and keep her uplifted in prayer. Ministerial staff, we got our ministerial staff meeting this Thursday coming up at 6:30 p.m. Eastern New York time. So we hope to hear from you guys there. Um, yeah, kombucha is fine. especially because you're healing. And we say that, by the way, for fasting, if you're doing things for medicinal reasons, or if you're taking medicine and you can't, and you have to eat, or you have to do something, please do so. Minister Tamara, yeah, you're doing these stuff for medicinal reasons, so of course, right? But we'll be doing our intermittent fasting. It'll only be 5 days this time, and it'll only just be Monday through Friday. So if you can join us on May 1st, we'll be done the evening of May 5th. May 5th, we won't even do we'll do an evening live session, but it'll just be our prayer and worship service. If you haven't done that with us before, we'll literally type our prayers in on the evening session, and we'll have music playing, and all of us can touch and agree on these prayers together. Okay. But thank you all. We appreciate you. Please check out my wife, as always, the Honor Maya, on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. We thank you so much. We appreciate all that y'all do. Thank you so much for blessing us. Keep us in prayer. We had a couple sisters on here that asked for prayer, and I don't know if one of the sisters did or not, but the sister who was even talking about her mother, we asked that you lift her up in prayer, or not talking about her mother and her mother losing her life. I'm not even sure how when that happened, or how soon that is, or how fresh that wound is, but we pray for you as well. We thank you guys so much, and we look forward to talking to you guys very soon. I'm asking that you keep Sister Kayla in prayer as well, and just keep one another lifted up. Thank you so much for being on. If you're on TikTok, if you stick around for just a little bit, we'll be doing our shout out. And if you've never done the shout out with us, this is just a nice little something that we do together to kind of touch and agree, do a little worship together, and that we take our leave. So hopefully you're down for that if you haven't done it with us before. But thank you guys again. We appreciate you, and thank you for looking out for us. They've been doing their best to keep our numbers down, but today we actually kind of had a nice little spike up, and then we came back down, but we appreciate it. So we have our ebbs and flows. We're going to keep moving and doing what we're supposed to, and we thank you guys so much. As always, it's been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken, until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, y'all stuff, that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, in you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. All right, shalom, family, peace. Okay, now as far as our shout out,